We will officially call our work session to order at 6:33 on Tuesday, November 19th, 2019. You need a roll call for this?
Yeah, I'll do it. Commissioner Carlton. Here. Commissioner Wasowski. Was he going to be absent tonight?
I can't remember.
Okay. Well, we'll see if he joins us in a little bit. Commissioner McLean-Wenzel.
Here.
Commissioner Logan.
Here.
Commissioner Mobley.
Here.
Commissioner Mayton.
Here.
And Chairman Crosby.
Here.
And I think the first thing on the docket is Mr. Goodman presenting House Bill information.
So, first of all, thanks for dinner. That was very nice. Kelly told me last night that it was going to be Nicholas's, and I said, well, I think I can make it. That was sweet. Thank you. So, I think we're going to just spend about a half an hour on two House bills that were passed in the last legislative session. One of which is probably more familiar to you. It made the news quite a bit, both leading up to the session and then, in the wake of the session. That's House Bill 2001. And then a related bill, I guess I would say, is House Bill 2003. And 2003 is what we were kind of just chatting about, and it's a lot more mechanical, and we'll talk about it in a second here. But I think your sort of interest was more piqued by 2001, and perhaps more questions about how that will work. In any event, so if you might remember, before the session, there's been a lot of discussion, I guess throughout the country really, but certainly on the West Coast and particularly in Oregon, with respect to the housing crisis, quote unquote. And I don't mean that because I don't think there is one. But you can call it, I guess, different things. But the fact of the matter is that the region is obviously suffering from a pretty steep rise in housing costs relative to the rise in people's incomes. And in certain circles, I think the consensus is that there's naturally some supply problems as well, just not enough housing. So 2001 was born out of that concern. I think it would be, I guess maybe like a lot of legislative attempts, even probably the sponsors of it would admit that it's not a silver bullet by any means, but just sort of an approach that maybe will, in the long run, help to ease some of those concerns. Well, the main thing that 2001 does, and I know the national press wrote about this and sort of said zoning is no longer, single-family zoning is gone in Oregon. It doesn't exist anymore. And that's a great headline. But it's not technically true. What the bill does do, and it distinguishes between two types of jurisdictions. There are jurisdictions that are either within metro, no matter what their size is, or other cities throughout the state that are what, and there's a dozen or so, that are large by, I guess, Oregon standards. It would be bigger than 25,000 people. So that doesn't apply to you. You're not in metro, you're not 25,000, a population of 25,000 or more. And then there is basically the standard for virtually everybody else. Very, very small cities are exempted from this, population of 1,000 or less. But what you will be subject to is a requirement under House Bill 2001 that in any zone that is zoned for residential uses, where you allow for a detached single-family dwelling, the legislation would require you to allow a duplex on a one-for-one basis. So if somebody wanted to come in once this is effective, or it's effective now, but once it actually applies to Sandy, and let's say that the density in a single-family residential zone was a 50-unit subdivision, they could build 100 units. They could put a duplex on each of those lots. So it would, at least potentially double the densities that would be allowed in your least dense residential zone.
Just assuming you can put a duplex on a single-family residential lot.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to be able to, size-wise,
I mean, so some of our lots are, 45,000 square feet, so, I understand what you're saying.
I think a duplex would easily fit on a, I mean, with respect to what I've seen already, in certain jurisdictions, that wouldn't present too much of a problem if somebody wanted to do that. Now, as ever, there's no requirement that they do that, there's no requirement of the city to say you must do that, but the city's not gonna be in a position to say you can't do that. That will take effect, that ability to put a duplex wherever there is the ability to have a single-family detached house in 2021, June 30th of 2021. So as of that date, somebody could come in and, like, just using that example again, and say, all right, well, I have 50 lots here, I wanna put a duplex on each. Now you have a 100-unit development. So the effective date is a means to allow for jurisdictions to change their code, essentially. Not really, I mean, I think Sandy will, and I'm sure most of our clients will actually go in and write in the permitted uses that a duplex is allowed outright. That's fair enough, but I think the real thrust of it is to try to kind of get a handle on some of the potential impacts of that, namely city services, potential for, again,
Sewer, water.
streets. I mean, you have a theoretical possibility of doubling what you've assumed your densities would be in your single-family residential zones. And that wasn't lost on, well, it didn't, League of Oregon Cities, was opposed to it on pretty much that basis, and recognizing that, there could be pretty substantial impacts on infrastructure needs. I don't remember the twists and turns, quite honestly. I'm not one of those people in our office that we have a clue to do, but that follows the ins and outs of all these pieces of legislation, because it's just dizzying, and it's all consuming. But I think at one point that date was much earlier, and so some of the comments about, if this is gonna happen, we need to have time to kind of prepare for it, resulted in the date of 2021, middle of the year. There's money that's appropriated in the bill, like $3.5–4 million. I mean, it's not a lot, but that allows the state, the DLCD, Department of Land Conservation and Development, to basically give grants to cities in their discretion. There's very little guidelines in the bill about to whom they give it to. But the idea, what the bill does talk about, is that if the city needs some help to sort of prepare for this in terms of what they would be requiring for public facility standards, whatever those are, the earlier I think a jurisdiction starts that effort, the more likely DLCD would be to grant some funds to do that. Let's see. So, as I said, it takes effect on June 30, 2021. The department, when I say department, I mean DLCD, is also tasked with coming up with a model ordinance. And the bill actually says that if a jurisdiction fails to adopt its own standards by 2021, that it has to apply the model ordinance. The only real kind of, sort of way out, it's not really a way out, it's just sort of a way to delay the effect. A jurisdiction can ask DLCD for a extension to that deadline. And that has to be based on pretty particular facts about, essentially, that there would be a deficiency, whether it's in streets, water, sewer. One of the things that occurred to me, I know the city, and this isn't something that I think the planning commission deals with all that directly, but maybe it's come up, I know it's come up in the past, and maybe it's come up more recently, but, the city is experiencing some sewer, issues. The city sewer, ability to process, wastewater is pretty much at capacity at this point. So that's a good example of something that, the effect of something like this, if it were, if it played out as it theoretically could, I don't think it will, but that could be really problematic. You'd have, twice the demand you were anticipating on a sewer system or, city streets, whatever it might be. So if you can document that and basically convince DLCD that this is a real problem, that, whether it's funding, whatever it might be, they can grant an extension, but as part of that, you also have to have, as part of your request, before they'd even consider it, a plan to remedy that problem. So it's not something that would, there's not gonna be the ability for any city to argue, we just can't afford it, therefore we can't be subject to this. It'll have to be, we have to be able to figure out how to finance it. That's really what it comes down to. And, all this is new. How that all plays out is anybody's guess, but the bill does allow for that to happen. So, that may be something that, in Sandy's case, I have no idea, but might be considering.
I'm just going back to what I remember reading about it. Isn't it only pertain in Sandy to any property within the urban growth boundary, not outside of it?
That is true. Yeah, it's just for properties in the urban growth boundary. That's correct.
Well, for most, there's most towns that apply. We're one of the two towns in Oregon or something that has an urban reserve. So, for all practical purposes, for all, anything except for urban growth boundaries, rural.
Yeah, I think the metro area is all urban reserves.
Metro does.
And
Yeah.
Bend Metro and I think a few of the other metro areas,
Yeah.
like Eugene, Springfield.
Right. There aren't many. I mean, Sandy is.
No,
sort of
there's a
unique in that
handful,
regard.
Well, my understanding was, because we're over 10,000, that's why it can't fit in.
Yes.
Because at 25,000, then you gotta allow triplexes and fourplexes.
Yep. Cottage clusters, a whole variety of other things. Right. So yeah, the only thing that will be required of Sandy would be the duplex requirement. And so it's a little interesting with respect to, so it makes this distinction between lands within and outside of a UGB. It also talks about lands that are not incorporated and also lack sufficient urban services. So what that means to me is that well could apply to folks that are, it would apply to folks that are within the UGB. But the way that you and the county regulate that would still be going to the county
Through the
first.
UGMA.
Right.
Yeah.
We would have a right to comment on it and everything, but, so, that's really the thrust of 2001. There is another provision that I wanted to point out, to you, and it isn't really new, but I'm not sure that, it wasn't something that got a lot of press. So, a couple of years ago, the law changed with respect to, accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and, currently, Sandy would have a requirement to allow anybody to put an ADU on their property if you allow a detached single-family home.
Say that again.
An ADU would be permitted outright for any
Now.
property. Now, that's correct. One of the things that, was coming up, for certain communities and trying to regulate that, and I should say, both for the duplex issue as well as for ADUs, there is language in the bill that allows for, a city to impose reasonable, siting and design standards, but can't have the cumulative effect of basically denying somebody's right to do it. What does that mean? Who knows, right? What's reasonable in that context? What's a design or a siting condition that would discourage the development of duplexes? That's for courts and LUBA to decide over many, many years. They don't talk about it other than just to say, you have the right to impose those criteria, but you can't do it in a manner that basically discourages development.
So how does, the one question I had is, how does off-street parking work in that?
I think, that would be one of those things that you probably can require to some extent, as long as it's reasonably related to essentially, I think, the idea of, well, we're gonna have potentially, twice as many people. So, so there would be, now this is actually to that point, so for ADUs, right, already, if someone walked in today, they wanna, they've got a single family home and they wanna build an ADU, Oregon law says you can do that, subject to these reasonable siting and design standards, criteria. We couldn't stop them from doing that, regardless of what our code says. What some communities have been doing, though, is sort of getting into this issue of, okay, well, but normally with an ADU, that's something that historically has been, you have somebody that owns the house, it's like the mother-in-law house, right? And they have a family member or somebody that, there's a, sort of a more practical reason why they wanna have this ADU. And it's usually, at least historically, kinda connected to a family issue or something, having, parents live with, whatever. So, certain communities were having some of those reasonable siting requirements to say, well, one or both of the dwellings has to be owner occupied. You can't, a person with a single family home couldn't just go out and build an ADU and then rent that out, just as you would any other unit. 2001 eliminates that possibility and says that the city, as one of those reasonable standards, it can't be that it has to be owner occupied. So someone wants to go ahead and just build an ADU because they think, wow, I can, make some money, they can do that.
Well, that all kind of makes sense if you put it in a Portland context. That's what I always have to do on these things, because, the issue was, all of a sudden with the economy booming in Portland, there's no housing. And it was, if you look at when I said no housing, it really was a lack of apartments or condos or something. And so when you look at all of the infill that they want to have in Portland, and it's happening, they're all multifamily structures. I mean, they're going up. I mean, there's places that I don't even recognize anymore. I come to this intersection, it's like, wait a minute, I'm in a canyon now. It used to be like this.
Right.
And,
I know that.
I understand all of that. Where here, there can always be, we can always have infill. We have vacant lots around here and there in spots. But in general, Sandy's growing. And so when we talk about a 50-unit development, we're talking about new housing. And so, that's kind of different than what's kind of happening in Portland that triggered it, if you like. So I always have to kind of keep that in mind, and try not, keep it in a Sandy context and not a Portland context.
I think that's true. I think, and I think that's part of why, local markets really, largely are gonna dictate how this all plays out. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Sandy experiences, once this kicks in, a decent amount of requests, and I mean decent, like maybe, 10% of what you see, 5% of what comes across, the counter where you'd have a request to do a duplex. But my sense is that it's not gonna be, the market here is different than the market.
Well, that's my point, is that at the end of the day, I want to have a realtor come along with this. Because if you want to develop your land, you say, I'm gonna put in 100 duplexes, and the realtor looks at it and says, that's great, but we're not gonna be able to sell them.
Right.
Because that's not where the demand is.
Right.
Then, I mean, common sense will prevail. Now, maybe
Exactly.
10 will sell, but, so the markets will determine all of that. So I think that, there's a higher probability that somebody who wants to live in Sandy and commute to Portland and wants a single family residence, because if they didn't, probably just
That's exactly.
stay down there to commute less.
Exactly right. I think it's, so, I say all this because that's what the law says. I think the practical reality is a lot more, will look a lot more like what we just described, where you might have a few requests, it's fine, you probably already get that anyway. It's not like you prohibit duplexes, there's an allowance for them in at least the R2, right, outright?
I think R1 also.
R1. So.
Yeah,
I think it's just
I think that residential one, I was thinking, because that's the one we said was interested why the last time we did the update, and so we added that. Okay, so, just to clarify one thing, if somebody came in tomorrow in SFR and wanted to put in duplexes, they couldn't. Until we, one, either change our code, or number two, we get to June 30, 2001. What if we change our code and approve our code prior to June 30th, 2001, then or do we have to wait till June 30th?
No, you could do it earlier if you wanted to. Nothing will prohibit that at all.
There'll probably be something that I bring up at the goal setting session with council in January about when they would like us to pursue that. And
Yeah,
just let that be a
Depends
council.
at the end of the day, because I don't know, you probably analyze the code. Maybe as simple as adding one line of permitted uses and moving on.
It's not gonna be much. We're probably not gonna apply for a DLCD grant.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
And I know what else you would do, because if you wanna still require 2 off-street parking spots on and on and on, you want the setbacks and on, what else is there other than just make it an outright permitted use?
Yeah, and as long as it's my belief, and I don't know if others share it, but I don't think the impact on infrastructure on services is gonna be that great, because I don't think the demand for a lot of duplexes in Sandy is gonna be that high. And I think that's gonna be true of a lot of similarly situated communities, throughout the state, so, at least right now, that's the way I view it. So I don't think this really, certainly is not, anything to be panicky about. Yeah, it changes in terms of the rights of people to do certain things on certain property, but I don't think the effect is gonna be that great at the end of the day. In the places where, maybe those margins around Portland, that's probably where you'll see it, and I mean like a Tiger, a Beavers, the first kind of inner ring suburbs, is where I think the effect will be most pronounced, because Portland already allows all this anyway. In some of those communities, I don't know this for a fact, I don't know if it's actually true of Tigard or Beaverton, but I'm assuming, that there are some of those communities where, most of them are Tigard's over 25,000. Be that as it may, where this might actually be really impactful, where they, you can get a lot of that type of development because it's so close to the city, and would be relatively easy to, put 2 units instead of 1.
The development I see all the time, so you just kind of come out that way on Sunnyside Road and then in Pleasant Valley.
Uh-huh.
That it used to be the Pleasant Valley Golf Course, now finally being developed. And we're talking about, what is that, 500-600 acres? I mean, it's
pretty big.
I mean, you just look as far as you can see, all you can see are yellow things running around. But you see the model homes, little things they're starting to put up, and it's a mixture, stuff.
What do they base the population on? Is it the PSU, or is it gonna be the census?
Well, so that's kind of, let's maybe turn to 2003, because that's kind of the House Bill 2003 issue. It could be, most likely, in most cases, it's gonna be the PSU for it.
Okay.
So, briefly, because honestly, the 2003 really is gonna maybe affect these two more than it would really affect you. And it kind of remains to be seen how much it will affect the planning process as well. But so one of the things that already cities have to do, and Sandy did this when it expanded its UGB. You have to do it then, and you can do it at other times, but you have to do it before you even consider a UGB expansion. As you go out, you do basically two things with respect to housing. You have to determine what lands are buildable, and there's a set of criteria that you have to run through to determine that. And then you have to do what's called a housing needs analysis. And that is really very fundamentally tied to this population forecast. So you look at what do we see, and again, there's a lot of criteria that govern this. What over a 20-year period, what is our population growth gonna look like? And then it even gets more sort of specific than that, a lot more. What do we expect in terms of types of demand for housing? So your detached single-family house, your row home, your duplex, your multifamily development. What are the price points that it's a very data-driven, and there's a lot of sort of fairy dust that's involved in it, to be honest. You're making a lot of assumptions. But that already is true. What 2003 does, I guess kind of two things that it does. Number one, that's always been a responsibility of local governments to do that, and it still will be. In the metro area, the government does that for all of the metro jurisdictions. 2003 will require the state, a few different agencies, to first do a regional housing needs analysis. So they'll go and they'll carve up the state into various regions and do essentially that study for that region and determine, hey, over 20 years, what are the regional housing needs for that particular area, and make a report on that. There are, going to be requirements to the extent that there's an unmet need. Then that process will say, we recommend, that this region of the state do X, Y, and Z, to meet this need over 20 years. That'll happen, and then it'll turn over. It happens really fast. I was almost amazed by how quickly they expect that to happen. They expect that analysis I'm talking about to be done by September of next year, so less than 12 months away. Then once that's done, then the focus will shift to cities and counties, and they are going to build a schedule, they being the state, that would say within a certain amount of time, at least the way the bill is drafted, every community will have to update its housing needs forecast, this housing needs analysis, and then potentially, very likely, have to take action if there is a deficiency that is identified. And the bill kind of guides what that might look like, providing incentives for people to build certain types of housing. So it's a little bit of a twist on what would normally be done.
That's the work that needs the grant funding.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's only like $1 million allocated.
Yeah, that's where we need the formula.
Yeah.
Well, I know having been on the commission when we did the urban growth boundary thing and all of that, that was several years, a lot of GIS, and that's not a snap your fingers project.
No, it's not. It's actually, yeah.
And it's usually done via contract.
Yep.
Yeah, we did the
You
last
have
one.
one personnel and two expertise in technical areas.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It's every 8 years now?
Yeah, and so then once you've done it, and this part I just don't fully understand, and there's parts of the bill that seem to conflict. So either will be that you may have an obligation to do it within, let's just say, like the next 4 years, okay? Or it could be that you don't have to do it until maybe in about 8 years. whenever that first time is, whenever that might be, somewhere between 4 and 8 years, I think, after that point, you'll have an obligation to do it every 8 years, at least.
Every what?
Every 8 years, to go through that process again of analyzing housing needs and forecasting out 20 years, every 8 years.
The good news, the average planner needs to do it once, right? Because you'll be on a new job in 8 years.
The good, the
You'll
good,
be now the king.
the good news is this is job security for planners in the state of Oregon.
Or consultants, one or the other.
Yeah, that's right.
Job security for you.
That's land use.
Well, you might branch out, right?
Two of employee that just passed his AICP.
And that's, I mean, that's really the long and the short of 2003. There's a lot more nerdy, detailed stuff that, you know, if you want to get some good rest tonight, I encourage you to read the bill. But yeah, I mean, that's, like I said, that's much more of the technical things that, you know, planning staff would really be, you'd see the sort of the end result of it, and out of that would maybe be a recommendation to, we need to expand our UGB, or we need to allow for, you know, multifamily dwellings where we haven't before, or something like that.
I didn't want to interrupt. I just, before we switch into our next year, I just wanted to say, I don't know if all of you have had a chance to read the article that I had sent to, and, about Minneapolis, and that I think it's really important for us as planning commissioners to understand where the whole single-family dwelling stuff started, and even though it's kind of become part of the American dream, it's not everybody's dream, and there's a lot of problems with it. And I think that article is pretty short. It'll give you a really good sense of why you're seeing pushes to changes. In addition to the affordability issue, there's, you know, there's segregation, race, socioeconomic, segregation in schools. All of that is tied to single-family dwellings, and I think it's really important that we as the planning commission understand that, as we're moving forward on trying to deal with all of this. And there's a lot of really positive things about density. I mean, I've been sitting on the transit committee, and, you know, even though it's more taxing for the roads and the sewers, it makes more sense for the transit, and it makes it more affordable. So I just wanna make sure we're all looking at the whole big picture, and not just feeling the pinch or the fear of change.
Well, and House Bill 2001 and 2003 for that matter, but more importantly, 2001 is here whether people like it or not at this point. So within, what is it, a year and a half from now essentially? It's pretty much a reality for all municipalities 10,000 and over. Or is it 1,000 and over?
No, it's 10,000.
10,000 and over.
Well, if anybody didn't get a chance to read that, I'd be glad to
I'm sorry, it's under
send it to
10,000.
you again.
Okay.
Just let me know.
That's fair.
Well, thank you, David.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So we'll take 5 minutes to break everything down and then start the.
Okay.
I'll put in the notes that we paused at 7:05. Just so you know, you might be live. I'm just double checking to make. I paused it while we were moving stuff. Okay, you're on YouTube again.
All right. Thank you. We needed that. Okay, well, since we officially started, we'll just pick up. And the next thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We had 2 packets, or in our packets, we had 2 sets of minutes. We'll look at them separately. The first one is September 23rd, 2019 minutes. Any corrections, additions?
I had one just question, it really was to Chris on the last page 5 of 6, we have the votes on the one, I thought I heard him vote no on that one, but you tell me how you voted, I can't remember, I thought that was a no.
It was a no.
Because it says they're all yays in the notes.
I looked, I had trouble when I read that one too, and I looked down at the bottom of that page, I don't have it in front of me right now, but it was marked as a no later in the document. I'd have to review it again though, if you give me a second.
I would have to look at it too, but I think it was potentially I think it was all A's for the closing the hearing, is that correct? And then it was a no in the motion for the decision, but I might be wrong.
Oh, yeah, we closed the hearing. Correct.
So I think everybody voted A to close the hearing, and then later, the next motion should have been that Chris voted no.
The no was
Okay, but you had the
specifically,
motion that
the no was
carried. You
specifically
didn't
for
show the roll
presentation
call vote on
going to
then,
council
on the motion?
amended with the behind and a side of the property. That's right, that's what my no vote was for.
Well, I guess my
Yeah.
question, there would be more of you, because then we have the motion, and then it just says carried, but it was a roll call vote. So if it's a roll call vote, don't we?
I'm pulling it up, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Hold on 1 second, sorry.
Yeah.
It's right above, on page
Page
5
5.
of 6, right in the middle of the page,
Mhm.
right above the 6.
Yeah.
Item B, planning commission would like to review. Yeah, the motion.
So the
Did we-
first one's the close the public hearing on the bottom of page 4.
Correct. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
This
Right in
is
the middle,
September
though, on
23rd,
page-
right?
Page
Yeah.
5, you have the actual motion, and then it just says carried, but that was a roll call vote
Oh, I
on that
gotcha.
motion.
Yeah, no, you're right. So it needs to be the roll call, and then Commissioner Mayton would be a no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and was that?
For item
was
B.
that for item B, was that the motion, the full motion, 'cause wasn't that something that we sent on to city council?
Correct.
So the motion is kind of, as it's written there, it's kind of vague. We did more than that in that motion. Correct? Then just say that, 'cause we would've made a motion to pass it on to city council with the recommendation that we, strike beside and behind and so forth.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, I can clear that up
Yeah,
before
I
you
mean, they
review.
already voted on it.
Yeah,
It's almost-
no, but I
Yeah.
agree, it's not written very clearly in here.
Okay. I'll move we approve the minutes contingent upon the changes we've talked about.
I second it.
Okay, been moved and seconded to approve the September 2019 minutes with the corrections, mentioned. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, or I think everybody was there?
I'll run that by you, Jerry, before we
Okay.
sign it, so.
Yep. And, then we had the 28 October 2019 minutes. And I think everybody, but Chris was there
I abstain, I was
for
there.
that one. So, any additions, corrections, changes to that?
I was also gonna ask for a little clarity on that one, on page 2, about 6 lines up from the bottom of the second paragraph, so 6 lines above 5.2. And it says, McLean Winslow asked fellow commissioners if mixed use should be allowed only on the ground floor, or is it a mixed use on site? I don't know what that statement means, but I know that's not what I meant. So, I remember the discussion at that time, and my concern was
that if you don't allow any residential on the lower floor, there was a problem with how are people going to get in, right? If you have a lobby and you have housing up above, you have to have a way for them to get, so there has to be some space on the ground floor that's residential so that people can get to. So that's what I said, but when I read this, I was like, I don't know that I said that, so I don't know if there's any way to clear that up.
I can try and then run it back by you.
Okay, all right,
That'd be about the
thanks.
only way I can
Yeah,
do it,
sorry, I
probably.
can't give you a better.
And it doesn't look like we answered your question
No,
anyway.
no, everybody kept on going anyway, so.
Well, it was a work session, it was just kind of
Yeah.
verbatim discussion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, with that,
Okay.
with that fix, motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes for October 28th.
I'll second that.
All right, been moved and seconded to approve the 28 October 2019 minutes with the corrections that we mentioned. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, with one abstention.
Abstain.
Chris abstained because he was not present. Okay, we're glad to see a bunch of spectators this evening. This is the time if you've never been to one of our meetings or even city council meetings, on each meeting's agenda, where we give opportunity for just public comment to the planning commission on items that are not on tonight's agenda. So you have opportunity to do that now, and for that and for any testimony tonight, we ask that you come to the podium and give us your name and your address for the record. So any general comments not related to anything on the agenda tonight? Okay, and you have to move quickly. We have no old business to look at tonight, and we have 3 new business items. And the first one is a public hearing on the Sandy Health Clinic Zone Amendment, which we will open at 7:18. This is the application 19-032, a zoning change. Call for any abstentions from the hearing body. Or any conflict of interest to declare? Any ex parte contact? Everybody's familiar with the site location that we're talking about? I'll call for any challenges to the jurisdiction of the planning commission, or any challenges to any individual member. Okay, if you testify, you must raise all issues at this hearing. Your comments should state why the application should or should not be approved, or include proposed modifications you believe are necessary for approval according to the standards. If you do not raise specific issues at the final evidentiary hearing or by close of the record, or fail to provide statements or evidence to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal the decision to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that particular issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any party has the right to request a continuance of the public hearing, or in the alternative, to have the record remain open. And just before staff report, for just maybe a reminder to us, but to the audience, our role tonight on this issue, because it is a zone change, is we forward a recommendation to City Council. So we will have discussion, take testimony and so forth, and our recommendation will go to City Council. Then they will also have a public hearing on the very same issue, at which time there will be opportunity for public comment. Staff report.
I'm having technical difficulties. When I connect this, it disappears in the screen. Does anybody else see it?
Well, we did.
It was up earlier.
It's not on my screen at all. It's like
Yeah,
no.
Just showed up on this one.
I can't click on it.
Oh, that one may be off.
Well, I did.
They hide those things.
Yeah, as long as we, now it's off there.
It's up here.
It's on.
Unfortunately,
Alright,
it's not.
I'll just-
You can read from that one probably. If you can read that. Can you guys all see this over?
Alright, so, should be fairly straightforward. Just a quick reminder that, the way that we are now doing our reports is more like a draft order. So you'll see what actually would get sent out as a final thing that will also be a little more efficient on our end, transferred over. So we're looking at, what was formerly the Oregon Wild Harvest Building there on Highway 26 and Tenike. And the applicant is requesting a zone change, so it's currently zoned, general commercial, which is C2, and they're wanting to change it to central business district, C1. It's just a zone change, the comprehensive plan designation would remain the same as commercial. And the ultimate goal is to renovate the site to be a medical clinic, which would be an outright permitted use in the C1 zone, so that checks out. So it's just a map of the existing zoning. The red there is the C2 zoning. The pink is the C1, so it's adjacent already to C1. It would just be an extension essentially of our downtown central business district. So it wouldn't be like a spot zoning or anything like that, which is good. So looking at the kind of criteria, the review criteria for the zone change, basically have to show that it doesn't have a negative impact on the city. It is consistent with our zone district amendment chapter, which the criteria are listed there. It's also consistent with the comp plan. Again, we're not changing the comp designation. It will remain as commercial. It's just going from general commercial to more specific business, central business district. And it's also consistent with the statewide plan goals. So, keep it brief. Our recommendation is to have this hearing tonight and to forward a recommendation of approval to the council.
Okay. Any questions for staff right now? All right, applicant presentation. Come on up this is your opportunity. If you have any additional comments that you'd like to say or anything.
My name's Lori Kello, and I'm with Ankrum Moyson Architects, and I work with Clackamas County, who has purchased the property. Do you want my address of my business? 38 Northwest Davis, Portland, Oregon, 97209. And we would like approval for this, just for the development of the project. Clackamas County has an investment into developing this business in the city of Sandy, and by changing it, the zone, we're able to develop the program with three access roads on 3 pieces of the property, and it being a regional land or a highway. The 20-foot setback makes it a very narrow footprint for the property. With the C zone change, we can then increase the footprint to accommodate the new medical clinic. And it gives us the opportunity then to renovate the building, to incorporate the City of Sandy design guidelines, and the building needs a lot of improvement to accommodate that. So we have that opportunity then to incorporate the architectural elements to comply with the design guidelines. So we hope you approve it.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Now we'll have opportunity for public comment, and we do it in kind of 3 sections. The first one is proponent testimony. If you are in favor of this proposal, then we'll give opportunity for opponent testimony if you're not in favor. And finally, we give opportunity for somebody who's not decided yet exactly whether they're for it or against it and just want to be on TV tonight. So with that said, we'll give opportunity now for proponent testimony. If you are in favor, would like to give testimony, you are welcome to come to this
you have to go up there? I'm in
Yes.
favor.
Yeah.
I don't know
If-
if to speak, but I think it would be a plus.
Okay. If you wanna be on the record, that's where you have to do it,
I'll sit
so.
right here and behave.
Okay. Okay, any opponent testimony if you are not in favor? Or if you just wanna speak, have a comment?
There you go.
Okay.
I'm in favor.
Your name and address.
Oh, Fonda Buck.
You thought you'd get away from it.
Yeah, I did. Fonda Buck, 39627 Pleasant Street. I think it would probably be an asset to the community. Can I go now?
We may need a motion, you know.
Too late.
You're fine, you're fine. Okay, any recap from staff or anything?
Nope, we still recommend you for approval.
Okay.
Yeah, we're excited to see the site get reused, I guess I'll also.
Yeah, it's been a long
Yeah,
time.
it's
Okay.
pretty much been the entire time I've been here. I think it was used the first 6 months I worked here, so it's been about 8 years plus, so.
Mm-hmm,
It was empty a long time before that, too.
yeah. All right, we can go ahead and discuss, or we can close and discuss.
I had two questions. I just had two questions. It appears from the narrative that the main reason is the setbacks. Is that correct?
For
I mean, the
this
setback,
change.
the main reason they want to go to C1 from C2 is so then they won't be impacted by the setback requirements in C2 because they can apply to C1. Is that pretty much, in a nutshell, the reason?
Yeah,
Because essentially, zero lot line, well, it's zero in C1, and C2 it's 20 feet, which is, been a problem probably for all the past uses too, but including the Ford dealership that was there, or was it the Chev? I think it was the Ford that was there way back when.
That was before my time here.
Yeah, well,
Mine too.
I do remember coming to Sandy in this little building that sticks out to the side, they would have a car.
Car in there.
Building in that corner,
Car on
right?
display.
That was- So that's when suburban Ford was a little smaller than they are.
And
I guess-
just to clarify, I think it is actually 2 setback code standards too. Because it would both be for the C2 and also for the other section that's applicable for arterial and collector streets.
Yeah, I guess the other question or comment I have, and it's back to our old friend parking. And that is, when we went through this with the prior tenant, the parking, the parking's restricted. You can see that from the photo if you throw the photo of the site up. And they have an agreement, they share the parking lot with the city there at the police department. But at that time, I mean, that was a wholesale distribution facility, as it wasn't retail. All right, so, has there been any traffic analysis that, I mean, when they,
That
I
would be
mean,
in
when
the
we go
next
forward
application.
on this, I mean, I'm concerned about the traffic and the parking a little bit. They indicate that it doesn't say they've implemented an agreement with Lutheran Church. It says they could, but is that in place?
Can we speak to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, I would think you'd get quite a bit more parking here than we did before. And if you look at it, the parking in front of the building has only got 5 or 6 spots. You could get another 5 or 6 if you used up the entire area that's on the side of the police department. There is a sidewalk that takes you from the Lutheran parking lot down. They do indicate that they would, the staff would park in the Lutheran parking lot, which is smart. Smart on Lutheran's part too to rent parking. But it's a medical clinic, so people generally going to medical frequently don't want to, can't walk or go that distance. So I think the parking needs to be somewhat understood or addressed here. As far as
Wouldn't
the
that show
use.
up though in the design application?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna see this again, Kelly?
Yeah,
After the zone change?
This is just the zone change, this is just the zone change request.
Yeah.
The
So-
actual, design review would be a totally separate application.
Okay,
That's
yeah,
where
but
we
you can go
would
ahead and,
do all
yeah,
the analysis.
come up and answer the question. That's why you came out here.
Yes, sir. My name is Steve Kelly, and I work for Clackamas County, and I'm working with the architect, and I've been a project coordinator with Clackamas County on various community development block grant projects here in Sandy and Milwaukee and other areas of Clackamas County. And currently, I can tell you regarding the parking issue, I met with Pastor Fenster this evening as my director, who had recently retired. He had several conversations regarding the parking, and they had discussed renting 15, possibly 17 spaces on the lot that is directly south of the church on the east side. There's a vacant lot there. And I spoke with him tonight because I wanted our council to look at the leasing agreement one more time. And I spoke to Pastor Fencer roughly two and a half hours ago, and we're looking at the agreement to be 17 parking spaces. That lot has 21 spaces, and he explained to me that he wanted to leave 4 spaces for the dental clinic that is exactly west of that lot, due west. So we're looking at having an agreement in place as soon as we have the clinic open, that we can say there's a dollar figure that we had committed to. The church is perfectly fine with the dollar amount annually. It's $6,000 annually for a 7-year period. And if we needed more time, because what occurred was there was a 5-year discussion, and I called Pastor Fenster about 45 days ago, and I told him I think that we may need an additional year or 2 to add to the 5, and at that time he said that would be fine, and so I just confirmed that with him this evening, that 7 years was our leasing time frame, and he was completely amicable towards those conditions. And so we would be looking at likely signing as soon as construction would be complete, if we're gonna move forward with this, in terms of, as long as the zoning goes through. Clackamas County's already purchased the building, and so that's where things are.
Yeah, well, I think it's a win-win situation.
Yes, sir.
For both the church, because, they use the place on Sunday.
Exactly.
And you guys use it during the week, so.
It would be a Monday through Friday, and maybe an occasional Saturday opening for a clinic, specifics regarding dental or some emergency appointments. But it sounds like this is a win-win for both the church and Clackamas County.
One final thing, we need your address.
Sorry about that. Business address is, it's a Public Services Building, 2051 Kane Road. That's Kane Road. Suite 245, Oregon City, Oregon 97045.
Kelly, that's probably the best, the best one you have had in a long
I
time.
got
You
it.
haven't had to probably look at the tape and try and figure out what the person said.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
As far as the zone change, I'm all for it.
I have a question now.
well, you've missed your window.
Dang it, I
Yeah.
have something to say.
You missed your window, I'm sorry. We
We'll
do
leave
need
the
to
hearing
close.
open For the moment.
Hmm?
We'll leave the hearing open now, for the moment.
Well, I don't think we
No.
need to.
No,
I think we're.
ready to
have
go.
nothing.
Yeah.
Ready to
In case you had a
close.
question on that.
Hmm?
Just in
No,
case-
I don't think
I'll move to
any,
close the public hearing then,
Second.
so we
Been
don't forget.
Who
seconded that, sorry?
John?
Thank you.
Moved and seconded to close the public hearing at 7:35. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any thoughts before somebody crafts a motion?
I'm good with it.
Good.
Okay?
Win-win-win.
Yeah, I don't see anything
I
else.
just, I'm for the zone change. Going through my mind, I've been here on the council, I've seen this piece of ground, plus the Lutheran church twice. So I hope it can work out for them, because
Mhm.
there are some, the challenges there.
Mhm.
Okay. Somebody give us a motion.
I make a motion to, it's not approving, but it's giving a
Forward
recommendation.
To city council.
File 19-032, zone change, Sandy Health Clinic, zone amendment.
Okay, understood? To send it to city council with our recommendation of approval. Roll call?
Commissioner Carlton,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean Wenzel,
Yes.
Commissioner Logan?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Commissioner Mayton?
Yes.
Chairman Crosby?
Yes.
I'm not sure anybody seconded that, but I'll second it.
I don't think
John.
anybody did either.
He
The
made
No,
the
he made the
motion.
motion.
Oh,
He
that
made
was the
motion.
closing.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too.
I wasn't gonna second guess you guys, but I didn't hear one either.
I thought I did hear you
Todd
second.
seconded.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry I missed that. Okay. We'll move on to our next one. System here. All right. We move right on to the next public hearing. Thank you. Which we will open at 7:36. This is application 19-027, conditional use permit, Mount Hood Senior Living conditional use permit. Any abstentions from the hearing body? Any conflict of interest to declare?
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Any ex parte contact to declare? Everybody's familiar with the location? We saw it not too long ago.
One more time.
Yep. I call for any challenges to the jurisdiction of the planning commission? Or any challenges to any individual member of the planning commission? Okay, you heard it before, you get to hear it again. If you testify, you must raise all issues at this hearing. Your comments should state why the application should or should not be approved or include proposed modifications you believe are necessary for approval according to the standards. If you do not raise specific issues at the final evidentiary hearing or by close of the record, or fail to provide statements or evidence to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal the decision to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that particular issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designate to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any party has the right to request a continuance of the public hearing or any alternative to have the record remain open. Staff report.
All right, so, I know you guys are all familiar with this site, so this is on Scenic Street, and earlier this year, in fact, we looked at reviewed a different proposal for the property that was this snowboarding camp. Today, we're looking at the same property, and we're looking at a conditional use permit for a senior care facility. It would have 52 residents and 6 employees at the largest shift. And they're similar to the snowboarding one, they're not really proposing any major changes to the exterior of the building or the site, so we're really just looking at the use here mostly. So if you recall from, I believe, February when we had the snowboarding academy, many of the conditions in this final order are the same. There's the same site plan submitted, and most of the conditions related to general maintenance and the requirement to submit a parking plan we've kept, so the order should look familiar. The one main thing that changed is one of the conditions from the snowboarding one was to submit a full traffic analysis, a full transportation analysis, which they did do with this application, and it showed that there's no mitigation necessary, so that condition has been fulfilled. So that is one difference between the previous one and this one. And the parking numbers are different just because it's a different use, so I can't remember what it was for snowboarding, but we had included a recommendation or a requirement that they provide a minimum number of parking based on foreseeable use. And for this one, that number would be 23, so we were recommending that you require a minimum of 23 usable parking spaces. And we are still recommending that a parking plan be provided because there were some issues with not quite knowing the dimensions, if there was enough aisle access width to allow parking on both sides. There was some maintenance, like weeds growing into parking places, and we just couldn't really tell if there was sufficient space, so we are still recommending and requiring that. And with those conditions of approval, we are recommending that you approve this conditional use permit tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions before we move on? Okay, applicant presentation.
Hi, my name is Melissa Miners. I'm the architect representing the property owner. Business address is 2117 Northeast Oregon Street, Suite 201, Portland.
Can you repeat that one more time?
2117 Northeast Oregon Street, Suite 201, Portland, 97232.
Thank you.
I'm sure you guys are familiar with this building and this property. So it's been previously approved through numerous conditional use applications for congregate housing, both back in 2000 and 2003, and then again in 2019 would have started for congregate housing. As the building currently, I
can't see on this screen, so it's
oh,
actually registered.
yeah, we just submitted these extra plans today, so you may not have had an opportunity to see these. So as part of the process of moving forward, if deemed approved, we would do some general maintenance as part of the conditions of approval, which would mean that the property does have some mature landscape, which is actually really nice. So along the frontage, there's existing swale, there would be some additional native plants placed in there, removal of some invasive species, and on the west side, which is facing down on the screen, so that the shrubs along that drive aisle would be trimmed up to provide access for vehicles and for fire department apparatus. As part of the memory care program, on the south side, is that right?
The north
Oh, sorry,
side
to the
wing?
north side, yes. So as part of the memory care program, we would be required to provide some outdoor secured fenced area. And in doing so, we might need to work with the fire department to adjust that fire truck turnaround there to provide some outdoor amenity space for them. And then the requirement is to add, provide 26 parking spaces. And so we've actually removed some on the west side there, and then removed also, as part of the condition of approval, is to remove the gravel parking, which is not allowed. But we do have 26 parking spaces at a minimum, and if deemed necessary, we would provide additional parking spaces.
But
on
your
the
parking
page area.
spaces, as you're talking about them on the street side or the?
Yeah, so there are, I can't say this, but I believe there's about 5 on the west side there, and then the remaining ones would be at the front.
Yeah, so you're not planning on any parking?
No, not at this time. And then general maintenance of the building, repairing of the main entrance sidewalks and steps leading into the building, providing accessible parking spaces at the main entrance there on the west side. And then just to give you an overview of the program and phasing this, and I don't know if it's okay to ask questions, but the conditional use would be allowed for up to 2-year time frame. And then in discussions with city staff, I think we were working with Terry Gift on the building, is maybe phasing the project and just to bring in some revenue and to be able to provide some revenue for future renovations of the building. Can you go to the next plan there? Is in the light blue is where the memory care program would be, and that would be part of phase 1. And that would include renovations to upgrade kitchen equipment, make sure the kitchen exhaust hood is operational, providing dining space, and also private shower rooms, and upgrading for accessibility. And then phase 2 would be the darker blue, which would be assisted living. And as you can see, that's the green area right there is the secured fenced memory care outdoor space. And then the second floor, which is the next plan. And that would all be assisted living on the second floor. That would be future phases.
So nothing, the second floor is in phase 2?
Would be, well, it could be phase 2, it could be phase 3.
Any question? I just have one question, is 6 staff for the full outplay?
Yeah, I wasn't
Building
involved.
full?
You guys want
I just,
to, Rhiannon, speak to the 6 staff?
'Cause-
Okay, sure.
cause that has bearing on parking, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The number of employees.
Hi there.
Yes.
My name is Mara Carter-Lay, and I live at 16837 Chula Vista here in Sandy.
Can you spell your name, please?
Oh, sure can. Mara, M-A-R-A. Last name Carter, hyphenated Lay, L-E-I-G-H.
And then the address one more time, please.
16837 Chula Vista Avenue, Sandy, Oregon.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Hi. So those ratios are pretty off. Each wing actually is going to have, based on the number of residents that are actually in the building at the time, for every 5 residents, you have to have a CNA working the floor. And for every wing, you have to have 1 med aid cart. So we're probably looking at more like 5 to 10 people per wing. For many facets of the business. There will always be on the memory care unit a nurse in the building at all times, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then under that charge nurse will be your CNA staff and your med aides. So there's going to be quite a bit more than what that analysis allowed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, we'll move to proponent testimony. If you are in favor of the application, we invite your testimony. Okay, if you are opposed and you're not in favor. Okay, if you just have a comment to make. And yes, you have to give your name and your.
Hi, I'm Tracy Brown. I live at 17075 Fur Drive. I live right around the corner from the facility. And I guess my main, I think I like the use better than the previous use because of the operation of the facility. Most likely the people will be stationary because I was concerned previously with teens. So I guess the main question I had is just the qualifications of the applicant. And it sounds like we heard new information tonight about additional staffing, and so I'm curious if the staff took that in consideration when they determined the required parking for it. So I would like to hear more from the applicant, if possible, to find out if they are going to run this, or they're looking for an operator, or how does that all work? I did look online, and there's no current license, but maybe they're waiting until they get an approval. So, it's all in the details of how well it's operated, if it's going to be a successful facility. So that's my main concern.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to staff recap, and applicant will have opportunity to rebut comments.
I was just gonna add something similar, so based on the narrative, it said 6 employees of larger shift. Based on what we just heard, it sounds like it should be closer to 20, so I would probably, recommend that we rewrite that condition to say, the applicant shall provide additional information based on, the number of employees of the large shift, and then we would set the minimum parking requirement at whatever that turns out to be, plus, the number of parking spaces that would be needed for the facility itself, for the senior care, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, the only other thing I would like to add to that also is we don't actually look at if they're a licensed facility or anything like that. That's not a part of the conditional use permit process. That would be up to the state to monitor and regulate that. When we do issue the business license, we'd make sure that the state has issued them a license. But that's not part of the conditional use permit process.
Got it, thanks.
Well, that was kind of my only question. It's the same what Tracy brought up. All of a sudden, when the staff changed, my favorite friend parking just jumped into my head, because
Yeah.
Staff has to park, that's a given. You know, and then you have the visitor parking, et cetera. So the simple question is the parking analysis valid? But I think they had a recommendation in here that before approval, they have to submit a parking plan. So I'm okay with staff, you know, go running with that, but I'm concerned that the number of spaces needed is a moving target.
Okay, we need to move on, and you have an opportunity for rebuttal. Applicant rebuttal, just any response to what you've heard from public testimony.
I'm sorry, I didn't put the application together, so
Okay.
I'm gonna defer. And can you ask that question?
This is just the opportunity in the agenda for the applicant to rebut anything, to respond to things like what Tracy has said or what staff has said, if you want. It's your option.
Hi, my name is Rayanne Voorhees. That's Raeann. Last name is Voorhees. That's V as in Victor. Oorhies. Address is 20025 Destiny Court, Bend, Oregon 97703.
Thank you.
My name's Rayanne Voorhees, like I said, and I own Voorhees Senior Living. And I've been working with Joy and the team for, gosh, probably the last 5.5, 6 months. I'm a state-approved nurse consultant and administrative operating consultant for the state of Oregon. I've been in assisted living, memory care for 20-plus years. I've spent copious hours and nights over at the Avamere at Sandy, which is an Avamere facility back in 2004 to 2010 as a consultant at that property as well. And I think the whole mix-up with staff was that on the application, that was care staff that was submitted based off of the phase of the 52 units. So you would see anywhere between 6 to 8 caregiving staff members. Now, during the day, when you have an administrator on site, you have a director of nursing on site, you have a community relations director, typically your sales and marketing, plus then you're going to have somebody in the dietary department, as well as potentially some, family members. There's going to be fluctuations of traffic. The great news is that there is 26 slots right now that are readily available to use. The traffic analysis did show 23. So, during the daytime, you may only have a few vacant slots, but night shift, typically around 7:30 p.m. to the morning, you're going to have many vacant spaces, as well as during, even the swing shift hours. So day shift tends to be the just like most businesses, the busiest time frame. In terms of qualifications, that's a great question, and Joy will be the first to say that this is not something that she has ever, done before as a senior living operator, and that is why the Department of Human Services required that she engage with a seasoned, saying that about, but she had to engage with a seasoned and experienced consultant that also is approved, which is my company. So I've got 25 different team members all across the state. We serve, probably 50 buildings right now in Oregon, and the plan is that we're doing the consulting, and we have not moved forward into any kind of management relationship, or we haven't gone to that next sequence of the contract, simply because we're still in this whole approval process. And there's no sense of really spending thousands and thousands of dollars until this, the site is approved. But the company, Mountain Hood Senior Living, will be required just as an operator to engage with the consultant for a minimum of 6 months. And that requires that you go through a state inspection. And typically that's very rigorous, every 24 months. At the 6-month mark, if they do not have a good state survey, meaning that they're in compliance with everything from fire and life safety to physical plant, environmental, all of the components, they will be required to engage with a consultant more long term. In addition to that, if they do not listen and follow the consultant's recommendations, the state of Oregon will say, we're not going to approve you licensing at all. You now have to engage with a management team. And so at this point, you know, they are required to engage with a management and nursing consulting company. They're not required yet to engage with a management company. Joy knows that that possibly is there's a high probability that they will be required to engage with a management company because of limited qualifications in Oregon practicing as a senior living operator. I know that Joy and her team have lots of experience, you know, outside of the state, and I'll let her speak to that. But in terms of just Oregon licensed administrator for assisted living memory care, there's definitely some safeguards there with the state of Oregon. So I hope that helps answer any questions.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we will, I'll give my little speech about closing. We'll identify the two presenters as the applicant. Right now, we typically, the agenda says we close the public hearing. And when we do that, that means all comment, even with the applicant, has to cease. And it's kind of a crazy thing that if we even had a question that could be answered with a yes or no, we would have to make a motion to reopen the meeting and ask the applicant, and it gets kind of cumbersome. So our tradition for years has been, at this point, we keep the public hearing open, but only for the planning commission to ask questions of the applicant. So the public testimony time has ended. Discussion. Questions?
You know, again, this is about the third rodeo on this facility, and kind of like with the first one, it'd be nice to see it in a stable situation with a stable use that's a benefit to the community. You know, I live just over the hill. I don't think I'm in the notice area, but I can walk there in 5 minutes from the house. So it'd just be good to see that. And again, my only concern is, I know it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg, but we're used to getting a proposal that's well staffed out, and because staff needs to determine what the adequate parking is, for example, and so, you know, they just need to have a good number. So they're going to be asked to submit a parking plan anyway as part of the conditions of approval. And so with that, I'm comfortable and would like to see it go forward.
I was gonna recommend amending condition of approval 6, which is the parking plan condition.
What number was that?
6 on page 11, I think. The third bullet says 23 usable parking spaces shall be provided. I think we could just delete that bullet, because it does, the first bullet is adherence with 1798. Or you could amend that to make some reference to determining the appropriate number of spaces. I don't know. I think that could be the vehicle where that happens, though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So basically reference like a parking plan and
Yeah.
the.
As
Rather
opposed to a
than mandate
number.
23, yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that's key is, I think you tell it, it's in a residential neighborhood. And you would want a situation where, you know, then staff is people are having a need to park on the
Park
street
on the
to start to
street.
take up
Yeah.
parking spaces that residences are kind of use. So we just need to make sure there's enough off-site parking for the facility to be self-contained.
Well, it seems like it would be hard to come up with something that would require less parking than this use. This
Well, I think they
seems
got
like a
plenty
really
of
good
it.
use.
Yeah,
for this.
that's why I asked the question, if we do anything in the back, because right now there's parking
Yeah.
going on in the back. But if they restrict that, then you have a few spots along the side there.
Mhm.
Majority of it's in the front.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's property, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say, Commissioner Moklin-Wenzel?
Oh, I just said that it seems like a good use of this property in a residential neighborhood. It's certainly gonna have a lot less impact than the last use that we
Approved.
had accepted, so.
Agree.
we gonna do this?
Okay.
Do these?
I think we're close to a motion, so somebody close us out.
I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay. Did you get
Second
that? Don and John? Move to close public hearing at 8:01. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Motion carried. We are closed. I think we can go to a motion unless any of you gentlemen have additional comments?
I
No.
just agree with
And the
everybody.
motion would, I think we're just comfortable with striking that one bullet
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
that labels the 23 usable parking spaces shall be provided. It will, with the new numbers in staffing, that'll have bearing on parking.
I'll go ahead and move that for application 19-027, conditional use permit, Mount Hood Senior Living conditional use be approved with the modifications, parking as discussed.
I second it.
All right.
And that was Mayton.
Chris.
Sorry, I'm trying to.
Okay, you got Chris on that one?
Yeah, gotta jump quick, man.
I'm
Yeah,
not very good at this.
Trying to get himself in minutes, you know?
That's right.
Okay.
I messed up the motions on like the other meetings, so I'm trying to get it right this time.
Well, that's why we tape this thing. It isn't for the public to look at it, so you can get the minutes right.
All right, let's go for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Carlton,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean Wenzel,
Yes.
Commissioner Logan,
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayton,
Yes.
and Chairman Crosby.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you.
We'll take a quick 5,
Yeah, well, we can give them,
because they're gonna leave.
yep, we'll take just a quick break.
Sounds good to me.
I'll pause this. The presentation minutes and run the recording.
was a lot of fun too, but it's over so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Just 'cause we're almost people.
And take roll call.
And take roll call, yeah.
No.
So it's like.
Multi-hatting here.
Okay.
Okay, you are well, no,
I would love to
it's
do that.
buffing again now, hold on. Somebody move. Okay, there we go, Todd moved. Okay, you guys are live on YouTube again.
Okay.
Okay. We'll move along to our final public hearing, which we will open at 8:08. This is the Pleasant Street Duplex, application 19-028, design review, conditional use permit. Call for any abstentions from the planning commission? Any conflict of interest? Any ex parte contact to declare? All familiar with the location? Call for any challenges to the jurisdiction of the planning commission or to any individual member of the planning commission? If you testify, you must raise all issues at this hearing. Your comments should state why the application should or should not be approved or include proposed modifications you believe are necessary for approval according to the standards. If you do not raise specific issues at the final evidentiary hearing or by close of the record, or fail to provide statements or evidence to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal the decision to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that particular issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any party has the right to request a continuance of the public hearing or in the alternative to have the record remain open. Staff report.
Thank you, Chairman. So tonight we're looking at, on the third and last item, we're looking at the Pleasant Street Duplex, which is located on the north side of Pleasant Street. As you'll see here, outlined in red, just to the east of Beers. So if you know where Timberline Meats is, it's about 1 block north of that. The applicant is Mr. Kevin Cachet in the audience, and Tracy Brown is representing him as his land use planner in this application. So what you have before you tonight is an application basically for a duplex on a lot within the downtown. And if you want to go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, the previous one. Here's just a Google Earth picture. I didn't have time to go take an actual picture this week, but so this is what it pretty much looks like. You have a house, a single-family dwelling to the east of it, which has a really large shop. Or no, I'm sorry, to the east of it's the old locksmith property, and to the west of it is a house with a small space in the front that was intended for commercial use, but I don't think has ever actually been used for commercial use, or not that I'm aware of. Behind the house is more single-family residential and duplexes, and then across the street is like the backside of the U.S. Bank parking lot, and I think there's a few apartment buildings over there. So if you want to go to the next slide. So the request is a conditional use permit for a duplex, which is defined as a dwelling containing 2 independent dwelling units, to be considered as an other use similar in nature to multifamily dwellings not contained within a commercial building. So as you'll hear from the applicant probably in more detail, is it's basically like your traditional duplex, no commercial features to it. And then accompanying that is a design review application for the proposed duplex structure in accordance with the C1 zone district standards, and then also the multifamily section within your development code. So if you look at conditional use, if we look at the meaning or the term for what a multifamily dwelling is, you can go to chapter 17, 10, and a multifamily dwelling is called out as at least 3 dwelling units in any vertical or horizontal arrangement located on a lot or development site. Based on the definition of duplex and multifamily dwelling in the development code, a duplex is not a type of multifamily dwelling, as a multifamily dwelling must have at least 3 dwelling units. So that's not really finding that the 2-unit duplex really fits under that definition within our development code. Furthermore, if you look at what the C1 zoning district is intended for, it's a mixture of retail, personal services, office space, and then some residential needs kind of mixed in with like kind of a mixed use environment is what it's going for. In addition, the subsection within the C1 zoning district does not permit new low density building types. And as we heard earlier today from House Bill 2001, we're kind of seeing duplexes as similar to single family dwellings in that they're both going to be allowed by June 2021 in all low density development applications. So it's kind of a low density. I don't know what traditionally people thought of duplexes as, but I think currently the state of Oregon and a lot of people around Oregon are looking at them as kind of a low density use. In line with the intent of the C1 district, the uses permitted outright are primarily commercial uses if you look through the permitted uses section within that zoning code. Residential uses that existed prior to the adoption of the code, residential care facilities, and residential dwellings attached to a commercial business. And it also has congregated housing and multifamily dwellings not contained within a commercial building as conditional use permit applications. If you want to go to the next slide. And then if you look a little bit more in depth even, it's also important to recognize that the code effectively makes duplexes non-conforming uses in the C1 zone, as noted within subsection 174210A2. It only permits duplexes existing prior to the adoption of this code. So how we've applied that in the past is that duplexes and single-family homes wouldn't be allowed in the C1 zone unless they're like to burn down. Then it's to kind of the director's discretion whether we want to allow it to be rebuilt. We've allowed it in the past. The other time it comes up is when people are trying to get financing and banks won't lend on houses in the C1 zone unless they get a letter from basically the city stating that we would allow that to be rebuilt. Because otherwise, if it burned down beyond 80%, it wouldn't be allowed to be rebuilt, and banks won't finance on that anymore. So, and we believe when it adopted 1742 that the city council clearly sought to limit a wide range of low-density residential uses, The fact that the existing duplex in the C1 are non-conforming. Also, it expressly states that the C1 does not permit new low-density building types. And 3, all development and uses shall be consistent with 1742, which prohibits new low-density building types, basically. So we don't really think it's a use similar nature to multifamily. So the recommendation tonight is that staff recommends Planning Commission deny the requested conditional use to consider a duplex as a use similar in nature to those permitted within the C1 zoning district. We find that it does not meet the intent of the C1 zoning district in that we don't permit new low-density dwelling types within the C1. We also believe that the request could contradict the intentions of the district and also the future redevelopment of the street through the Pleasant Street Master Plan. So, and that pretty much summarizes the staff report.
Okay. Questions?
Makes sense.
Okay. Applicant presentation.
Hello, my name is Kevin Cachet. I live at 41055 Southeast Kitzmiller Road in Eagle Creek, 97022.
Thank you.
And I'm the owner applicant. I own a construction company. I have built over 20 homes over the last 15 years. 7 different projects here in the city of Sandy. And the latest project, actually my wife was the one who headed up that project, was a multifamily on Hood Street, just 2 houses in from Bluff. And that had a duplex and a triplex all situated on one lot. Previous to that, the latest project that I built was a duplex on Hood Street, basically 2 blocks up from Bluff, or that would be east of Bluff. So as you can see, I've done similar type buildings in the area. I have done some residential. There's about 3 other residential homes. So I have experience in doing this in the city. I just want to kind of go through my process. Essentially, before I purchased the land, I went to the city and asked about the viability of being able to potentially build a duplex on the lot, and left with the idea that that was a potential viability of doing so. So from that point, I went through the pre-app process, and after getting pre-app notes, then I actually had Tracy Brown and myself met together and went over those, and then continued forward with the duplex proposal based off of those. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and let him take over because he can probably do a much better job than I can as far as giving clear understanding of what we were trying to propose.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening, I'm Tracy Brown, Tracy Brown Planning Consultants, 17075 Fur Drive in Sandy. And what I'd like to do first is just to hand out a couple of pages from the pre-application notes that Kevin went through. So as Kevin mentioned, he hired me to assist him with preparing the land use application for the subject property. And so prior to meeting with Kevin to discuss the project, he sent me the pre-application notes. I just copied a couple of pages from those notes, and there was, I think, about 10 pages maybe. So in the notes, on the first page, kind of in the middle, it goes through a density calculation for the site. And so because of the size of the property, it's 1.12 acres. The code says that you follow the density range in the R3 zone, which comes out to a minimum of 1 unit and a maximum of 2 units for the site. And then as you kind of see in the pre-app notes, there was kind of a caveat indicating that, however, we would most likely not allow only 1 unit because it's not similar in nature to multifamily. Then the pre-app notes go on and discuss the issue kind of raised about that it's not listed as a conditional use. And then it presents 4 options in the pre-app. Option 1 was to propose a duplex as an other use similar in nature to an allowed conditional use, and that would be the multifamily. Another one was to request a variance to the maximum density to allow 3 units instead of the maximum of 2, and request a conditional use permit for a multifamily. So the only thing I don't know about that is, and maybe later the city attorney can clarify, it's been my understanding that variances or adjustments to density is not a viable option. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it would be good to clarify that. The third option presented was that propose residential dwellings attached to commercial, which would be a permitted use. And that, as Kelly mentioned, the property next to that, when I was a director, had proposed that, basically converting the garage to a commercial. And it did operate as a commercial for a period of time. And then over time, it got sold, and there's no way to really monitor or require that continued use as a commercial space. And then the fourth option presented was to request a zone change from C1 to R3 and a comp plan amendment. So after I read the notes, Kevin sent them to me in digital form, and I read them, and I was kind of intrigued by the first option. I mean, I had been approached by the former owner of this property several times about, what could he do with the property. And I had never really considered the option number 1 to consider a duplex similar in nature. And so when Kevin and I met, I thought, that's kind of an interesting idea. And since it was included in the pre-app notes, I thought it could be considered a viable option. And so he then hired me to prepare the project narrative, and I worked very closely with the building designer. And there were, as part of the pre-app notes, you'll see in there that the staff said if it is proposed as a duplex, it would be required to comply with the multifamily design standards. So there's special design standards for just multifamily projects. So that was another consideration that when I read that, I thought, okay, maybe they are kind of thinking of this as a multifamily, because why else would you require a duplex to comply with those standards? So, so in our application, we tried the best we could to explain the reasons why we thought the use of a duplex was similar in nature to a multifamily. And really it's kind of between a single family and a multifamily. So is it more multifamily-like? Our argument was because it's, more than 1 unit and it is required to comply with the multifamily design standards, it's not exactly in the middle. It's kind of shadowing toward multifamily. I thought it was frankly, I thought the director had come up with an elegant way of kind of making this work with the option that was presented in the pre-app, and something that I hadn't thought about before. So given these facts, the applicant particularly, and I was kind of shocked by the recommendation to deny the application. So I guess in conclusion, we believe there are unique circumstances of this property that are sufficient to allow the Planning Commission to approve the requested conditional use. The The property is bordered on both sides by residential development, actually 3 sides, the back and 2 sides. Across the street is a multifamily project, and just down the street is a commercial project. Because of the location and the size of the property is 50 feet by 100 feet deep. And so it's very challenging to find a use that could accommodate parking and build the property to any kind of viable, viable use. So given those issues, I probably started talking to the previous owner, could be 15 years ago, about the property, and I didn't really, when I talked to him, I always thought, well, you can do a commercial below and a residential above. I never really considered the idea of a other use similar nature, to tell you the truth. But I do feel it's a kind of elegant way to possibly get some viable use on the property. So in addition to the size, the limited frontage, it's going to be extremely challenging to build a multifamily project on this property. So as I noted, the pre-app notes listed 4 options, and the applicant and I both read those and considered them to be potentially viable options. Certainly staff, we didn't ever think that staff would identify options that were then just going to be shot down. And it wasn't, in reading the staff report, I didn't get the impression that we didn't provide sufficient justification. It was kind of more of after they reread the code, they decided, no, that's not even a good option anymore. So the question is, what is a use similar in nature? So it's kind of up to you to interpret what is similar to a multifamily project and whether a duplex is similar enough to allow the approval of a conditional use permit for the project. Let's see. We understand the Planning Commission may be reluctant to go against staff recommendation. We understand that. And you may be concerned that approval of this request could set a precedent going forward. And we believe, given the details of this case, particularly the site constraints and the location, that a final order could be crafted to narrow the approval only to this property. And so I don't think you have to be too concerned that this could open the door to duplexes on every corner or every place in the commercial zone. So we respectfully request that the Planning Commission consider these facts and approve the application as presented. We do have, if you are inclined to approve it, we would like to go through some of the recommended conditions. Staff didn't go through those, but I think we would like to discuss those further, maybe if we get to that point, maybe during our second opportunity, if it seems like you're moving forward. Particularly the condition that requires the building to be brought up front and parking behind. This is a 50-foot wide lot, and so it's going to be very challenging or next to impossible to have a use with a building and parking behind the building, just because there's not enough room to get around it. So that's one of the conditions we'd like to discuss with you if it gets to that point. Thank you. If you have any questions for me.
I guess not. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. I don't see anybody out there, but we will, just for the record, give any opportunity for a proponent testimony or opponent or general comments. And we'll move right on to staff recap.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. I won't disagree with that. And I'll also say that I do agree that this site. Well, let me just start off by saying because it is a quasi-judicial hearing, I agree with Mr. Brown that you would not be setting precedents for approving this in the future along Pleasant Street. However, and I'd like to get Mr. Doofman's interpretation on this, it's not an interpretation that you're doing, but I think if we do start saying that duplexes are similar in use to multifamily, it might not have a direct impact on Pleasant Street, but it could have bigger implications for the whole city. So I just throw that out there as a caution. I do agree with Mr. Brown that it is quasi-judicial, so you're not really setting precedents in that sense. And I also agree it is a very tight site, and so it is going to be very difficult to develop. There's no question in that either.
Just to clarify one thing, on your prior statement, is your inference kind of go both ways on that? And that is that if duplexes were allowed, somebody would come in and say, I want to put a triplex on here as multifamily because they're similar in nature.
Yeah, so
it's the reverse of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so a triplex would, under our current definition section, qualify as multifamily.
I agree.
Okay.
But what I understood you were saying is that the interpretation could have broader implications for the
Correct.
city. And I'm thinking of what
Correct.
we talked about during the work session.
Yes.
So that if you're an SFR, quote for the moment, and there's a duplex proposed, but then they come in and now they want a triplex. And they go back and they say, well, wait a minute, it's similar nature to a duplex. It's the kind of reverse of what is kind of happening here. I'm glad you pointed that out.
I
'Cause
think
wanted
there
to
is
point
the
that out, too,
potential
because there
for
can be
some-
some slippery slopes that are unintended. You'd be surprised.
Yeah, I think House Bill 2001, like we talked about earlier, opens a whole potential gamut of issues like this. Like, now we have to permit duplexes in single-family residential, and what's similar in use to that? Is multifamily? I don't think it is, but somebody can make the argument and reference this decision tonight, I think. Now, getting back to the pre-app notes, I think, I agree with Mr. Brown and Mr. Cachet. Looking back at these pre-app notes, they're not written in the most clear fashion. I think I'm even the one that wrote them. I could be wrong on that. But irregardless of who wrote them, I think we've learned a lesson going forward that if we are going to give options like this, we need to be more clear that just because they're listed as options doesn't mean that planning commission or staff would be in support of them. And I agree that it was not clearly written on this. We do have the caveat, as you can read here, that says this review is not intended to be a comprehensive analysis of all applicable code sections, nor shall this review nullify code requirements that are determined necessary during land use review. So Mr. Brown is correct that when we looked at the options for this, we probably didn't dive deep enough into what is the implications of other similar use in nature. What does that actually mean? Would the C1 zone support it? And then when we actually did the full code analysis, we determined that, well, no, we don't think it would because, the code specifically lists duplexes and single-family homes only being allowed prior to the adoption of the code. So I agree with them that the pre-app notes are not very clear. And I've already talked to Mr. Cachet, and depending on the decision tonight, if they decide to submit again, I would be talking to him about reduced fee application amounts and stuff like that, which is neither here nor there for your consideration tonight. But I do want to make it clear that I've assured Mr. Cachet that I think this was kind of a goof up in the notes, and that I would like to do right by him if he submits again. If the decision is denial, if it's not, then that's fine also. So I do agree also that I think, as Mr. Brown pointed out, that it really just comes out to what you guys think is similar in use. It is really just a question, and I think that's why it's kind of written vaguely. I think we've already kind of said our piece about if we believe it is, if it's similar in use or not. We don't believe it is. And then if you do decide to approve the conditional use, I also agree that we need to go through the conditions list a little bit more. I also had one additional condition in regards to parkland fee in lieu that somehow just slipped. I didn't get it in the staff report, so I passed that along to everyone as well if you decide to go that route. So I think, like Mr. Brown, I would like to hear kind of where you guys are moving on this, and then if it is approval, then we would go further into all of the other conditions that are related, and if not, I don't know if we need to spend a ton of time on them. I think one thing either way that'd be really nice to get some more input on is either with approval of this conditional use, or if it's denied, what your expectations would be for the building being bumped up to kind of the sidewalk and kind of having a more pedestrian urban feel, as opposed to kind of the setback building that they were proposing with this application. And that would give, I think, either if it's an approval, then we can discuss that, and I'm sure the applicant will want to speak further. And if it's a denial, I think it would give the applicant and staff some clear direction on what planning commission would be looking for design of the site, if that makes sense. And then the only other thing, and I'll turn to David to specify this clear, but we are asked if you can do a variance request to density. And my understanding from previous conversations with Mr. Doofman are that you can increase density through a variance procedure, but you cannot decrease density below the minimum allowance. But you can clarify if I'm wrong.
That's the one thing I was going to say. State law now prohibits you from essentially varying a code requirement for density to a standard below what would be allowed, with exceptions that wouldn't apply here. But you can seek a variance through Sandy's. Well, there's really kind of two ways to do it. There's the adjustment process, because it's a numerical figure. That would be one option. Depending on the density, it may not get you that much. Then you could do a special variance that would allow for it to be increased. So, to increase it, you can do that. To decrease it, you couldn't.
Okay.
And if I can just point out one more thing. So the list, that's not very clear that, whether we would support them or not. This was kind of a direction I think that we've been heading in, is trying to, when we have applicants in pre-apps, I've been kind of asked by administration and asked by city council to give people options, and not to, when they come to the door, not to say no to them. So this was our attempt to do that. I agree, it was not done very well, and it's a lesson learned for us that when people come, that it might not have been a no, but we should have been a little bit more clear on it. So, just like.
Well, I think you're beating yourself up a little bit. I appreciate your owning how you feel. My wife will tell you that one of my favorite phrases is, "That's an option." And she knows I'm saying no when I say that, but it's always an option. And that's what you did. Number one is an option. Now, I think they felt that that's a viable option, et cetera. But you listed very clerically an option which they're actually proposing with their rationale. But that would require the planning commission to approve it. Maybe that should have been said. So in one more sentence, I said that requires planning commission approval. It is an option.
Right, because we're here tonight.
Yeah. So, is now the time for us to discuss?
No,
Oh.
we gotta.
We gotta go through the process, I guess.
We have, I should get everybody a copy of this.
Yeah.
This
That'd
order,
be good.
order of conduct. No, next is a rebuttal for the applicant.
I have to admit, this has been a ridiculously frustrating situation for me as a small builder, where expenses and time are really make things very difficult to make a profit. I mean, that's what I do. I build things to make a profit. And that's initially why I went to the city to inquire whether or not they thought this would be a viable method, a duplex. And I had built duplexes before, so I don't think there was any, I would hope there wouldn't be any misunderstanding regards to what I was asking. And so I did that before I even purchased the land. And so I guess it's very frustrating from a builder's perspective that, you do that, then you go buy the land, then you come here, and then, I mean, even with your approval on this, I mean, the hurdles, I mean, what I proposed is not feasible. And so I'm really frustrated here because just going down the chain of events, I have nothing, I don't have the possibility of building a duplex as it's written presently with the conditions of approval. So I guess that's all I can really say at this point. It's just really, and I appreciate the fact that Kelly is willing to, you know, with some sort of future application, if that was necessary, you know, offer, you know, a discount to that. But really, this really stems from me proposing a duplex on this difficult lot, and I would never have even purchased the lot if I had known that there would be this, I mean, these additional factors that came into play. So, I mean, I'm really at a great loss here.
Is your statement that you can't build a duplex mainly focus on the fact you wanted it street front and parking in the back, that you can't?
Yeah, the reverse, parking in the back is really not feasible with a duplex on that lot. I mean,
you need a driveway to
Parking
get there.
underneath.
yeah, in order to put a garage, you know, for each lot and a front door, I mean, you're gonna use that width already up. There's no way to get a driveway down even one side to get around back.
Well, the garages have to be in the back, but, yeah, I
But
see the
y-
problem.
yes.
You got it, you know, the lot, about half the lot gets dedicated to setback and
Right,
driveway.
right. And so, I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and do any blame game stuff, because, I mean, things happen. But, I mean, I went into it asking if there was, you know, a possibility of this, and I got the answer. I came away with believing that there was. And I'm not gonna sit here and do any blame game stuff. It's just that I don't know how to go forward. So, I think Tracy might have a couple more things to mention, that he had, made some notes on, and I'd like to, if he could have the opportunity to, present that, and then we'll see if we can go forward.
Tracy Brown again. So yeah, I appreciate the input from the city attorney. You know, looking at this particular lot, because of the size of it, 20% adjustment would not, it would only result in, doesn't result in more than 2 units. So it's not possible to do an adjustment to get a 3-unit, you know, multifamily project. And I'm not sure how, you know, we'd have to discover how a variance works in terms of, does that allow you 1 more unit or 500 more units? You know what I mean? There's really no numeric parameter to that. And I guess it's whatever gets approved, maybe. I don't know. I wanted to just quickly touch on, so I'm not sure for Kevin, it's the difficulty in trying to get enough units on that site to allow construction of a multifamily is very, very challenging also. I just want to address what Mr. Don Carlton said about kind of works the reverse. The problem with that is that the zoning district that you're in really will control the density. So this is a 5,000 square foot lot, and we're looking at the density of 10 to 20 units per acre. So if you go to a single family lot, there's no way you're gonna get more than 1 unit, because the density, you know, is either 5 to 8 units or 3 to 5.8 or something like that. So the density range is so low in a single family dense zone that, based on density calculation, you're not gonna be able to get a triplex on a property like that. Because you won't even be able to get one on this property as it is, because of, and even with the highest possible density range in the city, so.
No, buy 2 lots, put them together.
That would, yeah, requiring a replat and all that stuff, but anyway. So I'm not sure, I guess my point is, I don't think the risk, you know, this can be crafted as this particular lot, and I don't think there's a global risk to the city of opening up, you know, multifamily and single-family residential zones. Anyway, that's all I needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we talk.
So just to be clear, this is a commercial district zone, right? It's
Mhm.
C1.
C1.
And one of the conversations that we've had repeatedly since I've been on the commission is how little commercial space we have, and our community is continuing to grow. We only have so much place for commercial use. And I know that Pleasant Street is one of the streets everyone keeps talking about is gonna be kind of more of a downtown feel as our community continues to grow, and our main street is Highway 26. So it seems to me that what we want to really be encouraging on Pleasant Street is gonna be either mixed use. I mean, I don't even understand why we would do backflips to get more residential on that street. It's kind of like by attrition, it seems like we're gonna wanna take those spaces up and utilize it for commercial uses.
Well,
So-
that's it. I mean, when we did the replat and the rezoning,
Mhm.
the downtown can't go south.
Right.
It's gotta go north.
Yeah.
So, you know, that street, and Tracy knows this, he was planning director when we went all through it,
Mhm.
that's where that was basically gonna go.
Okay.
And it's historically been residential.
Mhm. And it's gotta
you know, et cetera.
transition over.
So, yeah, I mean, so you hit the nail on the head. You understand the objective. And we've seen that slowly happen, like La Bamba's,
Mhm.
you know, was probably the one that's basically there. Some businesses do spill over, like Columbia, like the bank.
Mhm.
Both banks kind of spill
Mhm.
over.
Spill over,
Et cetera. I think this is really an interesting one, and more difficult ones than some of you on the commission probably have had since you kind of been here, because there's no win-win. You think you want to make a win-win out of this, but I'm having a tough time figuring out how to do that.
Yeah.
I understand the applicant and what he did, and there's nothing wrong with his process or anything. I mean, you're gonna, before you buy something, you're gonna figure out if you can do it. If you can't do it, you're not gonna buy it. You know, he did his best to do that. If you read the code from the straight on down, and the code was approved in 2013, you know, and Tracy was director, I think, still at that time. I mean, it starts right off and says duplexes are essentially not allowed unless they're already there.
Yeah.
How more clear can you be?
Yeah, it could be.
I mean, it looks
more
like a duck, walks like a duck. Everybody knows what a duplex is. And the code up front in the definition section is very clear. It defines a duplex. It defines, you know, multifamily is 3 or more. Now, if the council didn't want that definition, they wouldn't have approved it. Sure, they're
Right.
close together. Are they similar in nature? Sure, you walk and talk to anybody, 100 people on the street, they're all gonna say they're similar in nature. That's a common term. But when you think of code, you know, it's black and white to some extent. And I'm trying to find a gray area here, because that's what we do, is
I
what
was
we do
gonna,
is
I was
we
gonna ask
interpret the
about a
code.
gray area. Can I stop you right there?
Pardon?
Can I stop you right there for a second, just
Mhm.
for clarification for me? Cause I don't think all lots are created equal. And if lots are C1, and this lot, as I've heard the applicant state, if you can't put a triplex on it, I
Right.
don't care if you turn it sideways, you won't be able to get a driveway around it.
Mhm.
Then it's never gonna have, a triplex or larger put on it. The only thing it could accommodate is a single family or a duplex, or a commercial type
Commercial.
business.
And that's
if
what
you
the
pull
code
up-
wants, is a
if you-
commercial.
And that's where I get a little confused, and that may just be my novice on this.
Yeah, here's not to
If you
solve the
pull up-
problem.
If you
Our-
pull up Google Earth on the map and look, it looks like that street is split in half. So the homes behind it are all in residential, and that front section is C1. And then as I look at that front section, they all look residential though. So it feels like if you put a commercial building in there, any size, it's gonna look out of place compared to what's already there. Unless one of those other homes in adjacent lots are up for sale, which they're not. So it feels like it needs to have a residential building put there, at least from my aspect, even though it's not what the long-term vision of what C1 is. Cause that's what's there now, that's what's surrounding it. I'm just not forecasting the small business go in there.
Well, but we can't do that. We gotta interpret the way things are here today with the code. You know, we can't, I think it's pretty important we take our feelings out of it, because we all have feelings and opinions, but we're here to interpret the code. The code is quite, to me, the code is very black and white.
Yeah.
And we don't have to agree or disagree, it's very black and white. Okay, I don't disagree with anything you've said, okay, but that's what the code says. And again, we're not here to
Yeah.
change the code.
Yeah.
And we hard here at times to interpret the code if there's a place for interpretation. And that's what I'm trying to find here, and that's what the applicant is saying. He says that we could interpret this to be similar in nature. Why? Because it shows up on the bottom. Even though as they say it's 7, it's actually G. I think the automatic outlining got you on the code, because at the bottom of that one, B goes to A, B, and C again. It doesn't go to 1 through 7. So anyway, but the point is the last one, which was 7, which is really G in the code, says other uses similar in nature. It's your miscellaneous category. It occurs throughout the entire code. You know, we always have this, it's there so we can do these things. But I can't find a gray area here, because it starts it off by saying duplexes are not allowed. They're not allowed, they're not allowed. That's, you know, and it's not a triplex, it's a duplex. I just look at it from a black and white standpoint. So I can't find the gray area based on what the code says, not what my feelings say, not my empathy for the applicant or anything else. That's kind of the hard part of being on this commission at times.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a question for staff, actually. I was reading in the code earlier how a duplex can be one building of 2 units or 2 different buildings. The applicant actually, the one on Hood Street had 3 in the back and 2 in the front. Is it possible to put 2 in the back and 1 in the front as a triplex?
As multifamily?
As
Yeah, I think
multifamily?
the code would allow that.
You have to get there, though. You have to get there, and how do you get there without using up half of the width of the lot to get to the back?
Well, the triplex is a conditional use permitted, right? You can get a conditional use for it. It's an option.
Well,
Whereas a duplex, you cannot.
Yeah, it'd be a multifamily, yeah. I don't know, that's an interesting concept. I didn't think of that, but that's a potential maybe.
I mean, you can always go up.
Well, because,
that's
but
what
that
I'm
fits,
saying.
because we gave a
You put the
conditional
parking
use
on
for
the
the other
bottom.
property on Hood Street. Could do- essentially do the same thing for a triplex, just a smaller version.
I think it'd be closer to meeting the intent of the codes than the duplex also,
Okay.
correct?
But that's a design thing that they would have to somewhat worry about. You know, what we're here to do is, the question they're asking us, I understand, is can I put a duplex on this lot? And that's what and we need to focus on that and not solve their problem for them. And the code tells me I can't put a duplex on that lot without seriously misreading the code.
Finding a gray area is solving the problem for them as well.
I can't find a gray area
Right.
because of, and Tracy says that.
It's hard to see.
I mean, Tracy says that. I read his report. He understands it. He laid it out just as good or better than staff did. He gave us the code, and it was, I mean, I agree with what he said, and I agree with what Kelly said.
What was your thought?
My thought was, is if you look at this one property on Hood, it has 2 units in the front of the property and 3 in the back. And if you look in the code section, if your duplex can be 2 separate buildings, well, why can't your triplex have 2 separate buildings as well?
You're thinking of
So
this
you can
one
put
where
the
there's.
2 that are attached in the back and 1 that's separate in the front. Then you can get the driveway around.
You're thinking of the third one in down Hood Street, across from the fields there at the school?
Yes,
Yeah,
the one that is his property.
Yeah,
Was
is
his
that
property.
the one, did you build that one?
The which?
The one that's
Yeah.
3 in from,
Yeah.
on Hood Street,
That
that's
is
across
correct.
from, it's got one up front and then there's one around the back.
Yeah, so I guess the answer to that would be, we'd have to look at it closer.
Yes.
Well, that lot's
Um,
wider than the one that we're dealing with here.
It is.
It
But,
is.
so the answer to that would be, we'd have to look at it closer, but it's a possibility.
Okay.
Now, the application would be different than what's before you
Right,
tonight.
right.
It would be a multifamily with a variance to the density standard, I believe. And then obviously the layout of the site would be all different, so it'd be a complete, we'd have to look at it again and bring it before
Right.
you.
We'd still have to answer these questions tonight and come up with a decision.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's really hard when you look at the definitions in the code section and it says multifamily is 3 units or more. It's really difficult. To me, there is no gray area to say similar as.
No, it doesn't.
Like you were saying, it's,
Yeah, I mean,
it's not possible.
It's pretty black and white, yeah.
If we start graying that, there's no reason to have the code.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Don, it's nice. Would be nice to have a win-win, but this is a tough one. because we do want to help, but again, we are constrained by the ink on these pages. And I agree that the duplexes were specifically, well, you know, at least a sideways look at, they were eliminated from this. Because of I don't know why else you would write in the code duplexes existing prior to.
The other thing I like maybe think about, keep in mind here is, I think the commercial that was envisioned for Pleasant Street, you know, wasn't what you currently see on Highway 26 with street tight and all the rest. It was more, can you imagine a person puts in a beauty salon with two chairs with a house in the back, or a barber shop, or guy puts in a State Farm, a building, you know, at the front of it's a State Farm office and his residence is in the back. Just like the barber shop that's down here, you know, he lives upstairs in this town. That's the kind of commercial that we're thinking of in there, so it actually will look a little bit like residential. But that's, I'm just trying to give you some background history of when we kind of went through the ideas of the code, and that street isn't like gonna wipe it out and it's gonna have a Safeway store.
Yeah, no, I didn't think that.
Well,
Yeah.
that's an
But
extreme,
walkable,
that's an
yeah.
extreme, right?
I was just gonna bring up one other thing. Not, this is kinda here nor there, but it's just something that I brought up to the applicant, and I don't even know if you'd be interested in it also, but you're kinda looking for a win-win or something like that. If the parking code changes come to fruition, as we discussed
I
in
wondered about
October,
that.
the applicant would actually be able to either build or sell for commercial development with, now this is only if it's just commercial
Yeah.
development, with 0 off-street parking spaces.
Right.
So I'm just throwing it out there as if that code is
If that does
passed in
get changed.
February, which I don't know if it will be, but if it is, then potentially the site could really be used a lot better than a big parking lot with a tiny building.
Right, right, that's what I was thinking too.
But that only applies to commercial?
Well, I haven't finalized the draft code language, and who knows, it could get changed 50 times between now and then.
What I'm wondering about.
Residential would probably still have some requirement.
Yeah, well, that's what I was wondering, if you could, if you had no parking requirements, that you could build a triplex on that place.
Oh, right.
That's what I wondered, if there was it sounds like there is an off-street parking requirement if it's, right now, even that, then that would still be true if it were residential.
Most
Even if that-
likely.
even if that code change were-
Most likely that's what staff is gonna propose. It would be a reduction from what our current parking standards say, but there would be some off-street parking if you have residential in C1. But who knows? I mean, maybe it'll go to planning commission and city council and they'll remove that, so I don't know.
I mean, I could make a case if it's in C1 that there should be no parking requirements regardless of the use.
Yeah.
I mean, what requires more parking spaces, a commercial that has people come and going every day, or somebody who just lives there and has one car? You know?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because that would open up the options for this to be street tight and to be, it could be probably could get, you know, triplex on it, and,
Okay. Was thinking it'd be nice to have a win-win, I'd go for a tie.
What's that?
I just said I'd go for a tie.
yeah, I just, you know, I don't want to continue to beat it, but based upon what's presented to us at this time, the decision we have, which is, can we allow a duplex on this? You know, my comment is no, only because of the way I read the code. Not that I don't want it to be successful, I don't want something to go on or to make it better, but we're not here to solve their problem, we're here to answer the one question we're being asked to answer.
Yeah, that's a tough site. I agree. And kind of generally, rather see a duplex on a lot like that, kind of at the end of Pleasant Street, than some of the other recent permitted uses with big parking lots. But I think this is better in that. But that's just my opinion, which is not what's at, what we're discussing here. So, yeah, I agree. It seems kind of black and white about whether you could allow that duplex or not. As much as I think it'd be a pretty good use of that site, but.
Yeah.
I do wanna go on record and, just it's supporting, Kelly in terms of working with the applicant, around fees for another option for using that land. I understand there was some confusion and.
Okay. Well, did you speak, John? Did you give us your thoughts?
I gave
or
my
Chris?
thoughts.
Yeah, I did. I was the same.
Yeah.
I thought that would be a good space, but that was just my personal opinion. When I read the code, it clearly excludes permitted use of duplex. I can't change that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. You know, I'm just here to interpret the code, the way the code's written. I don't think I don't think I have the leeway to slide on just the way it's written.
Yeah.
Because we don't like the way it's written, we gotta change the code.
My only thought, and this is just, again, being the rookie here, we had just in the last applicant moved a zone across the street and allowed it to extend. If this has residential sitting right behind it, and that space is ill-equipped for a commercial business or for a triplex, could we rezone that space for residential?
That's option
That was
4.
option 4, right?
And then allow that duplex to be there. And that's not the question that's being asked, so
Well, see, that, to me, that's kind of gerrymandering it.
Yeah.
And I can't say it is not,
We just did
it's
it, though.
a perfectly good spot for a business.
Yeah.
It's a perfectly good spot, 50 by 100. You know, what business you wanna put, like I said, the kind of business we visioned there, the dress shop in the front with the house in the back.
Yeah, I'm just considering surroundings of it in its
Yeah.
current state. So
Yeah.
It is.
and it's
The
opinion.
transition's gonna be
It's all
sloppy.
subjective.
Yeah.
Well, the zoning district was put in after the homes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the
With
problem with the
With the view
C1
towards
is you
the
can't get to where you wanna go if you
Correct.
keep allowing the same thing to continue, so.
Right.
And it's like a worm going down the road. It is not gonna go very fast, particularly on Sandy, but,
Well, it might go faster soon.
I mean, every one of the examples I've given you, I can point to a spot where I know exactly, if you investigate in here, that thing's exactly going on.
And we know that we have, I mean, as a planning commission, we have made all kinds of variances and, you know, bent over backwards to allow things when we feel we've had that latitude.
Right.
And we've, you know, but I agree, this, and.
It's not just one time referenced in there, it's 3
Right.
times. in some
Yeah,
sense.
it's heart wrenching. I think we all feel that.
Everybody comes with wanting a variance. They don't come if they don't want a variance.
Yeah. So I think, we're to the point where we can close the public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
Great, Chris is on board.
Chris is on board. Moved and second to close the public hearing at 9:03. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any further discussion before we craft a motion tonight? This has been a tough one. Somebody want to make that motion, since it doesn't sound like there's any more discussion?
I'll give it a shot, the first one. I make a motion for 19-028 DR Cup Pleasant Street Duplex to deny the requested conditional use for duplex consideration.
Second.
Okay, been moved and second. I think that's all we need for the motion, right, David?
Unless you have anything that you'd wanna vary from the staff report, in terms of the findings or the conclusions, but that would be it, yep.
Yeah, since we're not going on to the duplex,
Yeah.
then
I think we echoed everything the staff had reported.
Yep.
Okay, roll call vote.
Commissioner Carlton,
yes.
Commissioner McLean-Wenzel,
Can you restate what was said? To
the
deny
planning
it,
commission
right?
denies the
To
request
Yes.
for a
Okay,
conditional
yes.
use permit for a duplex.
Yes.
Commissioner Logan,
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayton,
Yes.
Chairman Crosby.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Make it appeal to council.
But it's, yeah.
Love to see it come back, option 3. residential dwelling attached to a commercial business. That's where we're gonna have to see more.
Find a business.
Huh?
Find a business that
Right.
would be ready to jump
Right.
in there. Okay, items from commission and staff. I have one from commission to staff. Chris brought it up and reminded me that he was finishing out somebody's term. When was that commissioner's term out, and is there a re-election or something?
Nomination, right?
Yeah, so I know, yeah, I can.
Great question.
Yeah, so I think if you go to the directory page on our website.
It says there December 31st, 2020, but when I got assigned, I was told it was 6 or 7 months, and then I'd have to go up for nomination
there-
again.
Well, Vera was there, and then, didn't you replace Vera Peterson?
I don't know who I replaced.
Well, do you wanna be up in 2020 or do you wanna be up in 2019?
Well, I told the chair I would love to continue, but it's really up to you.
What do you want? What
As
do you
far as
want?
I'm aware,
What do you want?
three of you are up in December 31st, 2020, and 4 December 31st, 2021. I mean, that's what our website says. I can double check with the city recorder.
Okay, so
The
nobody's
unlikely
up
that would
this
be-
Nobody's up
December.
this December.
That's kinda screwy.
I don't believe-
It ought to be staggered a little better.
Yeah, I
than
agree with that.
Cause I remember the last time, it was Jerry and you and I and Vera.
What, are your 4-year terms, right?
I don't know.
I think that's what it is. It
It's
should almost, it should almost be.
So many
Hey, you
years,
can
it
make
was
one.
We probably need to.
It should almost be 2, 2, 2, and 1.
It should,
Yeah,
actually.
4 and 3 is not probably the best idea, but.
Well, it doesn't help for kind of keeping experience on the commission.
Right, well, maybe
Yeah.
staff needs to decide, like, what would be a good way to stagger it. Can we start to stagger it going forward?
You have to change the
We'd have to
code.
change
Oh.
stuff.
Whatever
yeah.
the council wants to do, but.
I mean, for a while, they were talking about that each time somebody comes up for reappointment, they have to reapply and then, post it and everything like that. I will say though, that was under previous administration and previous, like the council members have changed a lot.
Mhm.
So I think we would need I would need new direction from them. Do you wanna do that method? Or do you want to, if somebody's interested on staying on, do you just wanna hear from them and then, so I'll get some clarification from you.
Yeah, yeah, but we're not, I was just thinking if somebody's term was up the end of the next month, that we need to alert city council.
Not that I'm
But
aware of.
Sounds like we're
Okay.
okay.
I think you are, yeah.
Okay, you're another year, Chris.
I'm good. Just wanted to make
It
sure.
takes a year to
I was
get
trying
up
to
to
plan for
speed.
2020.
It
Welcome
was-
back,
it
even
was
though
a
you were
year-
gone.
It was a
We
year
have
and
to keep
6
you on the
months.
council, so somebody's bringing the booze to the party.
Do you have anything for us?
Everybody's got a role here.
That's right.
So you have an appeal hearing on December 3rd, for Space Age Gas Station. And then December 17th, currently, so the next meeting's on a Tuesday.
The 3rd?
Yeah, if you don't mind flipping that, Don. It's on a Tuesday, the first Tuesday in December.
Mhm.
And then the one after is 2 weeks after. Thank you, Vanna. On a Tuesday in the middle of the month. And I don't know if the one on the 17th is gonna occur now or not. I'm not sure.
It's not clear. It may not. So, I mean, I would not mark it off your calendar, that's for sure. But
Okay.
Hopefully it would be something that you would not hear until, January.
Right.
Okay.
The would most likely or hopefully be delayed until January.
Okay,
Pretty
when
great.
would you know that? Are
Maybe
they-
as soon as tomorrow.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
And as soon as I know from David, I'll let you know. I'll
Okay.
send out
Perfect.
something.
And that would take off the 17th?
We don't have anything else on the docket, and we just had a work session tonight, and then like a powwow last month, so I think that close to Christmas, I think if you guys are in agreement, I would just cancel the meeting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Especially because you'll probably have 2 in January,
Okay.
and there's a small chance either 2 in February or 2 in March.
Okay.
So you'll be leading into a lot anyways, so I think it might be good to have a little bit of a break.
You wanna reconsider that, Chris? Hold us to 2019.
I'm in, Chair. I'm in.
We just have a lot of land use applications that are.
Welcome to what it was like around here in 2005. and
Yeah,
2007.
So
Any
they
questions?
ran a lot later.
Any questions for staff, things you've seen going on that
Did you like the new format of the final
Yeah, it
order?
works
Was that
very
fine?
nice.
Less
Less
work
to
for
Yeah.
you.
Oh, it's gonna save us a ton of time.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
now we can issue final orders within,
Should be fast, I mean, depending
Probably
on
an
how
hour,
many changes.
yes.
If there's not many changes, it'll be.
Mhm.
and it was actually a suggestion. We hired, or Jordan, the city manager Jordan hired a consultant to work with us on kind of looking at our staffing and looking at how we're doing processes, and also to look at efficiencies. And that was like the first thing they noticed is, why are you guys producing these giant staff reports that are so much different from your final orders?
Mhm.
It's must be killing a lot of staff time. And we said, yeah, it is.
Mhm.
And the expectation is to produce the final order quickly after the meeting. And sometimes if you have a 50 to 60 page staff report, it would take the better part of a day at least. Yeah. Yeah.
And not a very exciting day.
No, and just a terrible use of staff time, right?
No, your brain just
Yeah.
turns to mush.
So I'm glad you guys liked it. This is the direction we're heading in, so.
Mhm.
Good.
Yeah.
So, do we have a definition in the front of the code? I have it here, I could probably look at what a window is. I mean, we had
It's
to,
not a
we had
door,
to
I can
tell,
tell you that
we had to
much.
tell we told Mr. Benson that a garage door was not a window.
Correct.
So I'm kinda wondering if the ones on the side of the Tractor Supply are a window, by our definition of a window.
They have the effect, I have to say, they have the effect of a window. When as long as I drive by, I don't look and say, oh, that's a door, because of the reflection off the glass. That's
It's
what
just
I would
it's just
include.
like a design element that you could put there. You could have put a star, you could have put anything to break up the wall. My thought was a window, the intent of a window was to draw the public from the street into the business. That's why we want windows like, we want C1, to draw the people,
Mhm.
So that's why windows were required on that transit street. And a window, to me, is something you can see through. Now, under some conditions, we've allowed full windows for privacy, like in the several different places in town, et cetera. But, I mean, seriously, what's the definition of a window? That
Well, what
sounds
did
pretty
they have?
silly. And particularly, they're saying, talking to
what
Mr.
did they
Benson about a
present
garage
to
door
us?
being a window, but they've taken it the other way. And all I
It's-
do is, I just see this, I see Mr. Benson back here again pointing to that and saying, see,
That's
what's there between the garage door and that thing, cause you can't see through, so, and you said that was a window. So if that's a window and all it is a facade thing, then why in the hell is a garage door a window?
Well, the good thing is you will be seeing Mr. Benson's proposal back before you again.
Oh,
He's-
thank you, tell me when that is, so I can order Welk Honey.
I'll just leave, because it is something you'll be hearing, but I will leave you with, they are reapplying with additional variances and deviations. So you will be seeing that sometime in early 2020, we think. And to get back to the other question, I guess, around Tractor Supply Store, we were never, and correct me if I'm wrong, Emily, but I don't think we were ever given any information saying they would be, like the CMU block would go up, and then they would adhere these things. That we were never told that.
We knew, I mean, when it came before planning commission, we knew there were faux windows, kind of with Dawn, I assumed it was still a window cut into the wall that you just couldn't see through.
We'll have to be
Now
more
we know.
specific
Well,
next time.
I guess
Yeah.
that's my point is,
Yeah.
okay, it is what it is. So how do we make sure the next one doesn't?
This is a window
happen that way?
definition.
And we as a commission, I mean, do we want a window to be something you can see through that connects the business to the street?
Yeah.
If you're gonna require a window, that's its purpose. It's not to make it easier for burglars to get in. And so, and we've always said that was the whole purpose of that,
Mhm.
I wanted to think of the Chinese restaurant down here right by the Ace when they did the facade improvement.
That's a little
One of
harder
the things
one
they
though,
did
cause you're
was
not
put the
gonna see
windows.
much through a window driving 45 miles an hour past it on 26.
I mean, I
The
do.
point is, if you're on the sidewalk, the point is that,
Yeah, if you're
the
walking.
windows go down. That was one of the changes they made. There was these little windows on the top. They took them down so you can actually see in the
See
restaurant
inside.
now. So that's good for the restaurant. I mean, they're advertising their product.
Mhm.
Yeah, so one of their requested deviations was the tinted windows, and that was granted.
Oh, okay.
But we didn't know that it was tinted windows with a CMU wall 3 inches
Behind
behind them. Which I don't know if it matters or not, but yeah, we didn't know. So we did not know that's what they were gonna do.
No.
it seems bizarre, I mean, just because you think of a window as being something that is structural, you know, that, as you say, like, even if you can't see through it, you know that you can open it this way or that way, and you can go through it.
Well, see, the thing is.
I don't think that that's, you know.
We'll see this again when it comes to the,
That's exactly it. They wanna stack
storage
houses.
unit.
Retail
Because the
101.
storage
Yeah.
unit, we want the windows, but you
It's
don't wanna,
just big
you wanna
box
see in a
storage.
storage unit. I get it. I don't wanna be able to see into a storage
Right.
unit. But we want the windows, cause the code says you wanna have windows. So then those
Design element.
become, yeah, they're kinda like a design element more than anything else.
I think the risk that it runs is, I mean, this is nothing to do with law, and I'll shut up, I'm gonna say it, and then I'm gonna stop talking. You know, is that you run the risk of it becoming this sort of almost, Disney-esque kind of feeling where it's not, it just seems sort of fake and kind of bizarre, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's, you know, if it's just purely for the design element, you end up with a situation like this where that's okay, yep, we'll do it this way, this saves us a ton of money. But it is a window, right? You know, I think it would be lawful, but is that really what you're looking for, right? Like, is that really what you're hoping to see in the Sandy style? It's
Window's a window, not a window.
stuff that's that.
Yeah, I just concerned it's gonna come back around on us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
only talked
were,
about
Maybe.
we were as
precedent.
shocked as all of you.
Yeah, we were like, when are they gonna cut out the windows? When we saw the building going up.
Well,
Yeah.
we even made them bond because we gave them temporary occupancy, and we said, well, we need a bond amount for all these windows, and they're like, the bond amount came really low too, and then I was like, why is it so low? Oh, well, they're not even real windows, they're just flat, yeah. Wow.
I'm waiting for the day I drive by and one's gonna.
I know, that probably will happen.
Somebody's come right throwing a rock at it, and the thing didn't break, and it's like, wait a minute, my vandalism didn't work.
Yeah.
We think
Anyway,
they
the
are
McDonald's is
glass,
looking really
Yeah,
good.
I think they are glass, actually.
Yeah, they reflect like glass.
I think they are, I
also
tapped
was-
on one.
And
it
I
felt
also
like glass.
remember driving by there and I was thinking, did we ask them to put a door on that wall? And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, are they gonna paint it on there? Or, you know, that is solid block.
Yeah, there's just, yeah, something like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, interesting, okay.
Just at one time, by about this time of the year, towards the end of the year, we kind of had some little design awards or
Oh,
things,
yeah,
real awards
yeah.
that we kind of gave to people for doing good work in the business
Yeah, Tracy
community.
said that we've never done it since I've been the director.
I'd just like to throw it out, maybe to think about. You know, we did one, the best new construction, best remodel, it was something to recognize. Particularly, we did it earlier on in the adoption of the Sandy style, because it was kind of a recognition for those who went over, to try and comply, et cetera, so. I mean, it's just a plaque, that says a little something,
Yeah.
and we give it to them here, I think that's the thing, but.
Is that from planning commission?
City.
It was.
From the city.
Well, it wasn't from the planning commission, but we were the ones that,
Oh, I see.
well, I think staff brought
Yeah, I
them
mean, it was
to
from
us.
us, it was an award from the planning, from planning, the city, it was from the city.
Mhm.
But at the planning commission, they would come and we'd award them to them, picture came in the paper and they clicked it and.
I mean, honestly, if we wanted to relook at
So
doing
late
something like that,
this
I'm open
year.
to it.
For
I think
next
right
year.
now it'd be very difficult, so we could look at it in 2020, at the end of
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah.
What I would like to propose is that we would send you a list of all the new development, and then you guys as a commission would select who it
There you
is
go.
and present it. Because I just don't want it to be like a thing where staff is selecting, and then it
Right.
could be seen more as like playing favorites with different
Right.
developers and stuff, so
Right.
I'd rather it come from a neutral body being the commission.
Well, that's what it did, we gave us some others. But
Oh,
I'm gonna
okay.
come up
I
with an
didn't know how it
example,
was
I
done
think,
before.
you know, I think the McDonald's is coming along pretty nice from what I see. You know, that square box all of a sudden got a roof on it.
Yeah, I know, I
You
saw
know,
that.
that thing is gonna look not like a box.
I
Yeah.
was gonna ask
I
an
mean, when we're all
information
done,
question
that
about
would be
that.
a
When's
good
that supposed to
example
be
of putting
done?
some
My daughters
serious
are
money
killing
into a
me.
building and making
I said I
it
thought it was supposed to be
nice.
done in November, but.
Yeah, I
You
don't
can
know.
also make it so that if you start it for next year, you announce it in January and you let the community know that you're gonna take submissions or, nominations from the community, so that they feel like they've bought into it and they do some of the legwork. I mean, the community
might-
gets to
you'll
say,
have to-
hey, I really,
Yeah, dig up the criteria that we use, cause there was some specific things that
it's a good idea.
it wasn't just, we liked it.
Mhm.
It was there were certain things that we were looking for.
Yeah.
That would
Yeah,
make what-
we could definitely look at doing that again next year, this next year coming up.
most
Thanks for
creative
bringing
use of
that up.
windows.
The Tractors of Weisler will
I got the
not be
winner for that.
nominated for the best windows.
Wait for wait for the snowplow to come by there and grab some gravel.
Cleanest bathrooms in town.
Okay.
All right.
I
With
think
that,
we're-
I make a motion to close the
Second.
meeting.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn at 9:20. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed that wanna stay around?
Happy Thanksgiving.
There's still
everybody.
some food back there.
Yeah,
thanks again.
That
food was
Oh, yeah.
great.
Thanks for your presence.
Nice.
Now I can see, now I can skip the House Bill 2001 thing that they're doing at the state, at the metro level.
I don't know that you really
Flying
see
to
that.
South
Yeah, I mean,
Dakota on
2003 is.
Friday.
It's like a 3-hour thing. I was like, I don't know.
David,
That's
David, David.
Okay.
Yeah, it had one day last week, it was 6 below the chill factor, and it left him up and then.
Well, it wouldn't, not now.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for letting me.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's really only.
Yeah, it should, yeah.
I mean, but you could, each one of them could have an
I bet you.
Right, right, they can all come with ADUs.
I bet that is what happened.
Yeah, I can see.
Um,
Well,
Oh, did
it's
it?
weird, you married this. I'm not sure. The right to an ADU is tied to the
They said. Okay.
Yeah, now when they said.
Duplex is tied.
This is exactly what we're doing.
Where
I
you
bet
can
that
have,
line was.
where